transcribed interview of Andrew Bates conducted by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform under the authority granted to it pursuant to House Rule 10. Accordingly, House Rule 10 grants the committee broad jurisdiction for the committee to conduct investigations of any matter at any time. This interview was requested by Chairman James Comer as part of the committee's investigation into President Biden's alleged mental and physical decline, the Biden White House's efforts to hide that from the American people, and any unauthorized executive actions. Can the witness please state his name and spell his last name for the record?
Andrew James Bates, B-A-T-E-S.
Thank you. On behalf of the committee, I want to thank Mr. Bates for appearing here today. The committee appreciates your appearance for the interview. My name is Billy Grant, and I'm a counsel for Chairman Comer. Under the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform's rules, you are allowed to have an attorney present to advise you during this interview. Do you have an attorney representing you in a personal capacity present with you today?
Yes.
Will counsel please identify themselves for the record?
Sure. I'm Steve Jonas. I'm with Democracy Defenders Fund. With me is Josh Kolb, also with Democracy Defenders Fund, and Claire Boone.
Thank you. For the record, starting with the majority staff, can the additional staff members please introduce themselves with their name, title, and affiliation?
Margaret Harker, Senior Advisor for the majority.
Jake Greenberg, Chief Counsel for Investigations for the majority.
Sharon Uth, Senior Professional Staff for the majority.
Ellison Tolan, Counsel for the majority.
Will Harness, Staff Assistant for the majority.
Thank you all. Mr. Bates, before we begin, I would like to go over the ground rules for this interview. The questioning will proceed in rounds. The majority will ask questions for an hour, and then the minority will have an opportunity to ask questions for an hour, if they choose. To the extent members have questions for the witness, they will be propounded during their side's respective rounds. Do you understand?
Yes.
The clock will stop if the witness needs to confer with counsel, when counsel for the witness is speaking, and when members are speaking during the opposing side's rounds of questions. We will alternate back and forth until there are no more questions. Do you understand?
Yes.
There is a court reporter taking down everything I say and everything you say to make a written record of the interview. For the record to be clear, please wait until the staffer questioning you finishes each question before you begin your answer, and the staffer will wait until you finish your response before proceeding to the next question. Further, to ensure the court reporter can properly record this interview, please speak clearly, concisely, and slowly. Also, the court reporter cannot record nonverbal answers, such as nodding or shaking your head, so it is important that you answer each question with an audible verbal answer. Do you understand?
Yes.
Exhibits may be entered into the record. Majority exhibits will be identified numerically. Minority exhibits will be identified alphabetically. Do you understand?
Yes.
We want you to answer our questions in the most complete and truthful manner possible, so we will take our time. If you have any questions or do not fully understand the question, please let us know. We will attempt to clarify, add context to, or rephrase our questions. Do you understand?
Yes.
If we ask about specific conversations or events in the past and you are unable to recall the exact words or details, you should testify to the substance of those conversations or events to the best of your recollection. If you recall only a part of a conversation or event, you should give us your best recollection of those events or parts of conversations that you do recall. Do you understand?
Yes.
You are required by law to answer questions from Congress truthfully. This also applies to questions posed by congressional staff in this interview. Do you understand?
Yes.
If at any time you knowingly make false statements, you could be subject to criminal prosecution. Do you understand?
Yes.
This includes both knowingly providing false testimony, but also stating that you do not recall or remember something when in fact you do. Do you understand?
Yes.
Furthermore, you cannot tell half-truths or exclude information necessary to make statements accurate. You are required to provide all information that would make your response truthful. A deliberate failure to disclose information can constitute a false statement. Do you understand?
Yes.
Is there any reason you are unable to provide truthful testimony in today's interview?
No.
Please note that if you wish to assert a privilege over any statement today, that assertion must comply with the rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Pursuant to that, Committee Rule 16C1 states, for the chair to consider assertions of privilege over testimony or statements, witnesses or entities must clearly state the specific privilege being asserted and the reason for the assertion on or before the scheduled date of testimony or appearance. Do you understand?
Yes.
I would enter as Exhibit 1 a letter transmitted to your counsel dated August 21st, 2025 from Gary Lakowski, Deputy Counsel to the President. This letter informs you that President Trump has determined not to assert executive privilege over your assessment of former President Biden's fitness for the office of the President and your knowledge of who exercised executive powers during his administration. The letter also states that President Trump will not assert immunity to preclude you from testifying before the House Oversight Committee. Ordinarily, we take a 5-minute break at the end of each hour of questioning. But if you need a longer break or a break before that, please let us know and we will be happy to accommodate. However, to the extent there is a pending question, we would ask that you finish answering the question before we take the break. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you have any other questions before we begin?
No.
My clock reads 10:05 and the majority's time will begin now.
Mr. Bates has a statement that he would like to read. Would you like to hear it?
No statements during our time. Mr. Bates, can you please just start where you received your education from?
North Carolina State University,
And what year did you get that degree?
2009.
And now can you walk us through, I understand you have a pretty lengthy career, but just walk us through your career background.
I was an Obama campaign intern during the 2008 cycle. I worked in the Obama White House, then at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative during the second term. I was on the Clinton campaign in 2016. I was at the Democratic Super PAC American Bridge from 2017 until 19. Biden campaign, then the White House.
Thank you. What are you currently doing for work?
I am a small business owner, consultant.
Just to start with some more preliminary background questions, have you discussed this interview with anyone besides your counsel or family today?
Yes.
And who is that?
When the committee released the letter asking me to testify, I was contacted by a number of reporters asking if I had comment. I did not give a comment. I was also contacted by a number of former colleagues, friends who have seen coverage related to this.
And what did you discuss with those former colleagues?
They were conversations you would expect. People had seen the news. They were saying things, how are you doing? That kind of exchange.
Did you ever discuss the substance of your testimony here today?
I said that I was not aware of anyone having done anything wrong.
I'm going to...
Sorry, who did you tell that to?
You said that I do not need to disclose discussions with family members, right?
Correct.
I don't remember who in total I said that to, but it would have been some friends who had been on the campaign with me, other associates.
Other than the statement you just mentioned, did you discuss the substance of your testimony with anyone besides your family?
The substance, I kept that to my legal team.
Thank you.
I'm going to read you a long list of names based off the following question. We'll go through the list of names to any which that you answered yes to. We will come back to those after concluding the list. So from 2020 to present, so including post-administration, have you had a conversation about the president's health, age, or ability to be president of the United States with anyone on the following list? President Biden.
No.
First Lady Jill Biden.
No.
Hunter Biden.
You said pertaining to his health.
Health, age, or ability to be president of the United States.
In a sense, Hunter Biden.
How so? Well, we'll come back to that. Ashley Biden.
No.
Naomi Biden.
No.
Valerie Biden Owens.
No.
Vice President Harris.
No.
Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff.
No.
President Obama.
No.
President Clinton.
No.
Secretary Clinton.
No.
Annie Tomasini.
Yes.
Jeff Zients,
No.
Rahm Emanuel,
No.
Bill Daley,
No.
Jake Sullivan,
No.
Anita Dunn,
Yes.
Mike Donlin,
Yes.
Richard Stauber,
No.
Ed Siskel,
No.
Bruce Reed,
No.
Steve Ricchetti,
Yes.
Jen O'Malley Dillon,
No.
Ashley Williams,
No.
Anthony Bernal,
No.
Neera Tanden,
I've spoken to her. I don't believe it was about these matters.
Dr. O'Connor,
No.
Kate Bedingfield,
Yes.
Jen Psaki,
I have spoken to her, but I don't believe it touched on this.
David Axelrod,
No.
Corinne Jean-Pierre,
No.
Nancy Pelosi,
Actually, one caveat about Corinne. We can address it later if you want, but I just want to volunteer that.
Nancy Pelosi,
No.
Chuck Schumer,
No.
Hakeem Jeffries,
No.
any other senator,
No.
any other member of the House of Representatives,
No.
any member of the cabinet,
Yes.
which member of the cabinet,
Dennis McDonough.
any other members of the cabinet,
No.
So you answered yes to Hunter Biden. What was the extent of your conversation with Mr. Hunter Biden?
We had texted one another a little bit after some of the podcast interviews that he did.
And what were you discussing about those podcast interviews?
I don't remember in full, but they were mainly political observations.
And when did these conversations occur?
I don't know the date. They would have been subsequent to some of his podcast interviews.
Just to be clear, do you mean the podcast interviews that Mr. Biden was giving post-presidency? So this year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do you mind repeating the first question you asked about whether there were conversations with any of these folks, just to make sure that the witness has that in mind?
Yes, it's from 2020 to present, so including post-administration, have you had a conversation about the president's health, age, or ability to be president of the United States with anyone on the following list?
Thank you.
In those conversations with Hunter Biden, what did you discuss about the president's health, age, or ability to be president of the United States?
I don't remember the particulars, but it mainly had to do with discussing the political aftermath of the 2024 election.
As it related to the president's health, age, or ability to be president, or I'm not following how that answers the question.
Not his capacity to be president, but the effect that attacks related to age had been a factor in the campaign.
And what aspects of age were you talking about?
When critics of the president would make claims related to his age.
You also answered yes to Annie Tomasini. When did you speak to Ms. Tomasini?
The most recent time would have been earlier this year. I believe it was after the announcement of the president's cancer diagnosis.
Did you discuss anything about his health or age or his ability to be president, or just that he had gotten a cancer diagnosis?
I was expressing sympathy when I learned about the diagnosis.
And no other conversations with Ms. Tomasini
And I'm sorry, could you repeat the time period?
from 2020 to present?
Yes, I spoke with her when we were working in the White House together.
And what were those conversations?
It had to do with the way in which the president was performing his duties well.
You never expressed, or she never expressed to you, any concerns about the president's mental abilities?
No.
What prompted the conversation with Ms. Tomasini about the president's ability to do his job well?
Media inquiries that had to do with criticism from political opponents.
Why was it your inclination to speak with Ms. Tomasini about media criticisms or inquiries about the president's age or health?
It is typical in most organizations where I have worked to brief senior staff on coverage that you are fielding questions related to.
Would you go to Ms. Tomasini to brief her on other matters?
Yes.
And maybe Ms. Tomasini did not answer a lot of questions when she came before this committee, so maybe I don't understand her exact role to its fullest extent, but why not, a Mr. Zients or a Mr. Richetti? Why particularly did you go to Ms. Tomasini for that?
I did not say that I went to her in particular.
Okay. But you did go to her, you did speak with her about the president's health or ability to do the job. So why were you speaking with Ms. Tomasini about that in particular?
For one thing, it was normal to give someone of her station awareness of a wide variety of major stories that covered many different topics. Also, media inquiries tended to involve what it was like to work with the president, and she worked with the president closely.
How often did you brief Ms. Tomasini
In what respect?
about press?
Frequently.
Every week?
I don't know the exact rhythm of it, but I would frequently brief her about press.
And who did you report to?
Initially Jen Psaki, then Karine Jean-Pierre.
Thank you.
You also answered yes to Anita Dunn. When was the most recent time you spoke to Ms. Dunn?
It would have been earlier this year.
January, February, can you guesstimate a little bit better? I won't hold you to an exact date.
I'm not sure, but probably in the first quarter of the year, maybe the second.
And what did you discuss?
We discussed sorry, my phone is vibrating. We discussed the impact of the 2024 election on American politics. During the administration, she was another person whom I would regularly brief about coverage.
And regularly brief, daily, weekly?
More than weekly when she was working in the White House. And that is coverage on a very wide array of different subjects.
Would that include coverage on President Biden's age and mental health?
Yes.
And what were those conversations?
It would involve me telling her about a reporter inquiry or a media narrative, and we would discuss those.
You also answered in the affirmative to Mike Donnellan. When did you most recently speak to Mr. Donnellan?
It would have been the first quarter of the year, I believe.
And what did you discuss?
He had called me regarding news about a book by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson.
And what did you discuss about the book?
He asked for my assessment of the best way to handle media coverage of the book.
Did you ever speak with Mr. Donilon about President Biden's age or mental acuity while in the White House?
Yes.
And what were those discussions?
Mike Donilon worked with the president closely, and he would attest to the president's high performance.
Were these also frequent meetings between you and Mr. Donilon?
Less frequent than with Anita Dunn. And I would also talk with him about a very wide range of subjects.
You also answered in the affirmative to Steve Ricchetti. When was the most recent time you spoke with Mr. Ricchetti?
It was earlier this year. I don't remember exactly when. Maybe 2 months ago.
And what did you discuss?
I don't remember what we last discussed. Our last interaction was a phone call.
Can't remember if it was anything relating to President Biden's age, mental acuity, general health.
I don't believe that it was.
Have you ever spoken with Mr. Ricchetti about President Biden's age,
Yes.
health? Tell us about those conversations.
Very similar to the kinds of conversations I would have with Mike Donilon. They would also involve the president's legislative agenda because Steve did a lot of work with the Hill.
And how frequently did you communicate with Mr. Ricchetti about the president's health, mental acuity, and age?
Every so often. Most of our conversations were about legislative issues.
And just so I'm clear, and you might have said this, when you say that the conversations regarding President Biden's health or age were similar to those with Mr. Donilon, I believe you said that you had spoken with Mr. Donilon about Mr. Tapper and Mr. Thompson's book. So I'd like to just ask the question, have you had other conversations with Mr. Donilon about President Biden's health, age, or ability to do the job?
Yes, of the sort that we were talking about a moment ago, that Mr. Donilon worked closely with President Biden, and he would often talk about how well the president was performing, would give anecdotes.
And with these conversations with either Mr. Donilon or Mr. Ricchetti, were you asking questions of them, or were you just filling them in on what the media was saying?
It was prompted by media inquiries or related media needs. So I would inform them about a reporter's interest, and we would discuss the nature of the inquiry.
And I appreciate that. And when you say that you would discuss it, would you ask questions? Steve, is the president able to do his job? Is the president, going to sleep earlier? Anything along those? Did you ask questions to either Mr. Ricchetti or Mr. Donilon?
I would ask questions that mainly relayed what reporters were asking me to get their input.
Do you remember any of the questions that you asked? I'm not verbatim, but can you give us an idea of the nature that reporters were asking you that you would then relay to either Mr. Ricchetti or Mr. Donilon?
The questions could have to do with political strategy, about how to respond to attacks on the president that had to do with age, or if a reporter brought a particular claim about an alleged meeting or other kind of work event, I would go to them if they had knowledge of said event.
But specifically about the president's age, health, or ability to do the job, did you ever ask questions about the underlying concern, or were you mostly asking questions about how to respond in a political sense or pushback?
It was mainly questions that surrounded what the reporter was asking me and then what they felt would be the best way to respond.
You also answered in the affirmative to Neera Tandon. When was the most recent time you spoke to Ms. Tandon?
The most recent time I spoke to her would have been within recent weeks.
And what did you discuss?
We talked about congressional redistricting.
And did you have conversations with Ms. Tandon about President Biden's age, mental acuity, his overall health?
Yes.
And what were the substance of those conversations?
She told me, also in the context of dealing with reporter questions, about her experience speaking about policy with President Biden.
And her experience of policy with President Biden, meaning working on a policy agenda or shaping certain legislative actions, that kind of thing?
Yes.
And did you have more direct conversations about the president's health, his age, his mental acuity?
Similar to what we've discussed with Mr. Donnell and Mr. Ricchetti, it had to do with me communicating things said by reporters and then talking with her about elements of her experience that would be relevant to demonstrating the president's work ethic and abilities.
And just so I'm clear, are we talking about the time frame post-presidency or during President Biden's presidency?
During.
Thank you.
And how frequently would you speak with Ms. Tandon about these topics?
Intermittently, not very often.
Less so than Mr. Donnellan or Mr. Ricchetti or Ms. Dunn?
Yes, because those individuals had wider portfolios.
And when you were speaking with Ms. Tandon about these topics, was it over the course of her entire stint at the White House? I know she held several positions. So I'm wondering in what context you were having those conversations, if it was when she was staff secretary or when she was head of the DPC.
I only remember this occurring when she was the head of the DPC.
You also answered in the affirmative to Kate Bedingfield. When was the most recent time you spoke with Ms. Bedingfield?
I don't remember the most recent time that we spoke, but it would have been pretty recent. She is a friend.
And did you discuss President Biden's mental acuity, age, overall health with Ms. Bedingfield?
When she was in the White House,
And what were the nature of those conversations?
it would have paralleled conversations with Anita Dunn and some of the others that we've mentioned, where I was briefing her about media narratives, reporter questions, and we would confer about the best kinds of ways to respond.
Did she ever mention any concerns to you about President Biden's health, mental acuity, or age?
No.
And I think you said this, but these would have also been frequently, as with Ms. Dunn or Mr. Donnellan or Mr. Ricchetti, these conversations.
Yes.
You also answered in the affirmative to Jen Psaki. When was the most recent time you spoke with Ms. Psaki?
Within the last 2 months.
And, excuse me. What did you discuss with Ms. Psaki within the past couple months?
I believe the last time we spoke, it was about Texas redistricting.
And during Ms. Psaki's tenure in the White House, did you discuss President Biden's age, mental acuity, and overall health with Ms. Psaki?
Yes.
And what were the nature of those conversations?
Very similar to the conversations with Kate Bedingfield.
Similar to Kate Bedingfield, these happen rather frequently.
Well, Jen was my boss, and so I would speak with her very often about all kinds of subjects. And as we've been talking about with other individuals, I would explain questions I was getting from reporters, stories that we expected, and so we would collaborate about those.
And did Ms. Psaki ever share concerns with you about President Biden's age, general health, mental acuity?
No.
You also answered in the affirmative to Karine Jean-Pierre. When was the most recent conversation with Ms. Jean-Pierre?
The most recent conversation would have been when the letters asking us to speak here became public.
And what did you discuss about the committee's letters to you all?
She called me and asked if I had seen this, and I said I had. And I said that I thought it would be prudent for us not to talk about it more.
So I take that to mean you didn't have any discussions about a strategy or what you would say as far as testimony.
That's correct.
While in the White House, did you talk with Ms. Jean-Pierre about President Biden's health, mental acuity, or age?
Yes.
And what were the extent of those conversations?
It would have been similar in nature to the conversations with Jen because Karine succeeded her as my boss.
And I assume those were also frequent meetings, given that she was your boss.
Yes, and about many different topics.
You also mentioned that you spoke to a member of the cabinet, Dennis McDonough, I believe is who you said.
Yes.
When was the last time you spoke to Mr. McDonough?
It would have been a couple of weeks ago.
And what did you discuss with Mr. McDonough?
That we felt it was wrong for the Trump administration to undermine labor rights of Department of Labor or Department of Veterans Affairs employees.
Have you had conversations with Mr. McDonough about President Biden's age, mental acuity, or overall health?
Yes.
And what are the extent of those conversations?
During the presidency, he is a cabinet member with whom I spoke about what it was like to work with the president as part of my process of responding to media inquiries, and he did interviews.
And so what were those discussions like, working with the president? How?
Because of his role overseeing the administration's policies towards veterans, he would work with President Biden on those. And Secretary McDonough spoke to me about the detailed fashion in which the president would monitor his work.
And did you have any other conversations with Secretary McDonough about President Biden's age, mental acuity, or overall health?
They would have been in that vein, and he attested to having a lot of confidence in President Biden. And then I want to just make sure I'm offering one thing. Since you mentioned 2020 to now, I misunderstood. There are some other cabinet members.
Okay, and who are those?
Tom Vilsack.
When was the most recent time you spoke to Mr. Vilsack?
I believe it would have been about a year ago.
So during President Biden's term in office.
Correct.
And what did you speak about with Mr. Vilsack?
The nature of cabinet meetings.
And can you just elaborate on that nature of cabinet meetings? What does that entail?
We received press inquiries that had to do with President Biden hosting full cabinet meetings less often than some past presidents. And Secretary Vilsack was frustrated at that kind of coverage. I was interested in his opinion because he had been a cabinet member in the Obama-Biden administration as well.
Understood. And did you have any conversations with Secretary Vilsack about President Biden's age, mental acuity, or overall health?
Yes.
And to what extent were those conversations?
He underlined his confidence in President Biden, having worked with him for the entirety of the administration.
If we could jump back to Secretary McDonough for a moment. You mentioned that he did interviews. How does that relate to the subject matter of the president's health or ability to conduct his position in office?
He was doing media interviews for stories that I was the point of contact on.
Did you coordinate the interviews?
Yes.
Is that common for someone working in the press secretary's shop to coordinate interviews for cabinet secretaries?
In every single administration.
It is.
Yes.
Thank you.
You said you misunderstood the question's original timeline, which is totally understandable. I write the questions and I often misunderstand my own questions. So I just want to, were there any other cabinet secretaries that you spoke with about the President Biden's health, age, ability to do the job from 2020 to present?
Secretary Blinken.
And what did you speak with Secretary Blinken about regarding this issue?
It would parallel the conversations with Secretary McDonough. They had to do with Secretary Blinken working with President Biden closely on foreign policy and how he had seen the president demonstrate strong abilities.
And do you know when that conversation was, roughly? Or series of conversations, if there were multiple?
I don't remember when that would have been, but during the term.
Okay, and sorry to be tedious, but would it be helpful if, because you misunderstood the question to begin with, I just want to be clear, of all the names that were read to you, are you confident, besides the ones we've already gone over, that you haven't spoken with any of those other people about the president's health, age, or ability to be president of the United States?
Would you mind just reading them one more time?
I will happily do that. President Biden,
No.
First Lady Jill Biden.
No.
I'm going to skip the ones you answered in the affirmative. Ashley Biden,
No.
Naomi Biden,
No.
Valerie Biden Owens,
No.
Vice President Harris,
No.
Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff,
No.
President Obama,
No.
President Clinton,
No.
Secretary Clinton,
No.
Jeff Zients.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about that one. When do you remember speaking with Mr. Zients about the president's age, health, ability to do the job?
The most recent time would have been during the final year of the administration.
Okay, and that would have been the most recent time. Is it fair to say that you were having these kind of conversations throughout Mr. Zients' time as in the White House?
I would have conversations with him occasionally when it came to questions from reporters and media developments.
Okay. And what, and let's, with the last time that you spoke with him about this, can you tell me what you were talking about?
The last time would have been about a story. I don't remember which story.
And when you were having that conversation about a story, is it accurate to say that you were talking about how to push back against, a certain narrative?
We would have been providing context on what it was really like in the administration and to work with President Biden.
And did Mr. Zients express any concern about the president's age, health, ability to do the job?
No.
Okay. Going back to the list now. I'll read the question again. 2020 to present, so including post-administration, have you had a conversation about the president's health, age, or ability to be president of the United States with Rahm Emanuel?
Hold on, just 1 second. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Bill Daley?
No.
Jake Sullivan?
Yes.
When did you have this conversation with Mr. Sullivan?
I don't remember the last conversation, but it would have been during the term.
And was that conversation similar to the ones that you were having with Mr. Blinken, Secretary Blinken, Secretary Phil Sachs, Secretary McDonough?
Particularly similar to Secretary Blinken because of their portfolios.
Returning to the question, have you spoken with Richard Sauber about this subject matter?
No.
Ed Siskel?
No.
Bruce Reed?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that conversation or series of conversations?
Because of his position as Deputy Chief of Staff, he was someone with whom I would talk about many different subjects. And he is a person who I informed about media inquiries.
Do you remember the last time you spoke with Mr. Reed about the president's ability to run the country, his age, or his health?
It would have been during the final year of the presidency.
Returning to the question, have you spoken with Jen O'Malley Dillon about the president's age, health, or ability to be president?
Yes.
Was it similar in substance to the conversations you would have with Mr. Reed?
Yes, and those would also touch on schedule.
What about schedule in particular?
She oversaw logistics, operations, and so when reporters asked questions that had to do with the president's schedule, she's one of the people whose input I sought.
Thank you. Returning to the question, from 2020 to present, have you ever spoken with the following people about the president's age, health, or ability to be president? Have you spoken with Ashley Williams about this?
Yes.
Can you tell me about those conversations?
It would have been asking about logistics in the context of media inquiries that we got about that subject.
I'm not a media person. What is logistics regarding media inquiries mean?
When a reporter would ask us a question that had to do with advance or movements, she was someone who was knowledgeable about some of those things.
But how does a reporter asking about movement have to do with the president's age, health, or ability to be president?
Reporters would combine those.
In what way?
They would ask questions about the president's schedule or the way in which he moved and optical effects that could have from a public relations standpoint.
So would you ever ask Ms. Williams if the president was having problems moving?
I don't believe so.
Then can you give me an idea of what an exchange would look like with you and Ms. Williams about the president's age, health, or ability to be president?
It could be something like,
If you remember an exchange, just give them the answer, but don't make up potential exchanges.
I don't remember a particular exchange.
You just remember that there were exchanges about the president's age, health, or ability to be president.
Yes, but I don't remember a particular one in the sense that you're requesting.
Did you ever speak with Mr. Bernal about the president's age, health, or ability to be president?
Yes.
What would you speak with Mr. Bernal about in this regard?
It had to do with his experience working with the president.
And did Mr. Bernal ever express any concern about the president's ability to be president, or health, or his age?
No.
Did you ever speak with Dr. O'Connor about the president's age, health, or ability to be president?
Yes.
What was the nature of those conversations?
We would talk with regard to the media aspects of releasing the summaries of the president's physicals. And if we received media inquiries about the president's health, he was someone who was a resource.
Did you ever convey to Dr. O'Connor that a particular finding wouldn't be portrayed favorably in the media?
No.
Are you aware of anybody conveying that kind of information to Dr. O'Connor?
No.
Did Dr. O'Connor ever opine on media strategy regarding the release of information regarding the president's health?
I remember him being pro-transparency.
Do you recall, were you ever made aware of conversations of anyone in communications speaking with Dr. O'Connor about how particular findings or medical treatments could be conveyed in the media?
No.
Have you ever spoken with Nancy Pelosi about the president's ability to do the job, or his age, or his health?
No.
Have you ever spoken with anybody in her staff regarding those matters?
Yes.
Who did you speak with?
I don't remember his name, but he was acting as her spokesperson when we were in communication.
And what was the nature of that conversation?
It had to do with a Wall Street Journal story that we agreed was unfair.
What was unfair about that story?
That it was slanted.
Can you expand on what you mean by slanted?
It was disproportionately influenced by political opponents.
And what did you convey specifically to the spokesperson about that story?
That we had the sense the Journal had a preferred angle, and they were giving undue latitude to Republicans who had a political interest in that angle.
And what did the spokesperson convey back to you with regard to that?
He arranged an interview with Speaker Pelosi, and after the article published, her comments were omitted, and he told me that she was offended by that.
What was the Wall Street Journal article about?
It was about what it is like to work with the president in private.
And what did the article say it was like to work with the president in private?
I don't have it in front of me.
It's a long article, it says a lot.
But you remember enough to say it was slanted.
Yes.
sorry, just so I understand, so the article was published, and then you called the spokesperson for Speaker Pelosi?
We were in touch before it published and after.
Okay, let's start with before. What were you communicating in the before conversation?
What I outlined.
Okay, and the spokesperson this is the conversation before the article was published. And the spokesperson during that conversation conveyed what back to you?
That former Speaker Pelosi was going to have a conversation with the reporters.
Okay, and then the article was published and you spoke with the spokesperson again, correct?
Yes.
And what did you convey in that conversation?
We were agreeing that the story was presented unfairly and relied very heavily on sources from the opposite political party. And he told me that she was offended that the journal did not include her comments.
Did the spokesperson convey to you what former Speaker Pelosi said during that interview?
It was roughly that she defended the president and his ability to do the job effectively.
And very roughly, if you can, do you know when roughly that story was published?
I believe it was in May of last year.
Have you spoken with Senator Schumer, about the president's age, ability to be president, or health?
No.
Have you spoken with anybody from Senator Schumer's office about these matters?
Yes.
Who did you speak with?
Monica Lee, a member of his communications staff.
Anyone else?
I believe there was one other, but I don't remember his name.
When was the conversation with Monica Lee, or if there were multiple, when were those conversations?
I don't remember how many there were, but the main thing I remember is that it related to the same Wall Street Journal story.
I see. Do you remember if it was prior to publication or post-publication?
Prior.
And what were you talking about with Ms. Lee?
It was similar to the conversation with former Speaker Pelosi's spokesperson about the nature of the story.
Did Senator Schumer sit for an interview?
I don't believe he did. I believe they gave a statement.
And were you, in that conversation, were you raising concerns that the story was going to be slanted?
Yes.
Why did you think the story was going to be slanted before publication?
The story, in a sense, admits it is slanted because it explicitly grants that it is mainly drawn from Republican sources.
Did you believe that more Democrats should be interviewed for that story?
I did.
Did you make suggestions about which Democrats should be interviewed?
Yes.
Who did you suggest?
I remember suggesting that they go back to Senator Murray and Congressman Meeks because we were concerned that we'd heard that when those individuals were approached, they were only asked if they could corroborate claims that had been made by Republicans, and they were not given a real opportunity to share their firsthand experience.
Did you suggest that they speak with anyone else?
This was happening because the journal had approached them specifically. I don't recall this happening with regard to those two members in other settings.
And just explain to me how this works. Is it standard practice to, were you conveying that message to reporters directly?
Which message?
To return to Senator Murray and Congressperson Meeks?
I did convey that I thought this would be fair.
And were there, is it standard to tell reporters to re-interview people?
I did not tell them to do anything.
Is it standard to suggest that they do re-interview certain individuals?
If you feel that there has been a significant omission that could distort the nature of the reporting, absolutely.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to return. I have a follow-up question regarding Ms. Tomasini. I'm still a bit confused as to why you would be speaking with Ms. Tomasini about the president's age, health, ability to be president when she was director of Oval Office operations. What about that position would give you any insight about the president's age, health, or ability to be president?
Reporters would ask us what it was like to work with the president, and any person in that role, whatever the administration, will work with the president a lot.
And Ms. Tomasini also was frequently accompanying the president, even in his travel, is that correct?
She would accompany him on travel sometimes.
And she would be in the residence with him as well, is that correct?
I don't know the particulars of that.
Did you have more to say?
There could be moments where people went to the residence. I'm not saying otherwise, but I don't know about when people were in the West Wing or not.
Did you get the impression, though, that Ms. Tomasini was helping the president in his day-to-day doing of his job?
No. Not, I mean, with the exception that not outside of what would be normal for any person in those jobs, whatever the administration.
One more follow-up on Ashley Williams. When you were explaining your conversations with her related to the president's health, age, or ability to do the job, you mentioned discussing logistics and media optics. Could you explain what that discussion was about?
Reporters would sometimes ask us about schedule and how it might affect perceptions, or they would ask us about something that they had heard took place on a trip, and so we would discuss those things.
Did you ever speak with Hakeem Jeffries about the president's age, health, or ability to be president?
No.
Did you ever speak with anyone in his staff about that?
Yes.
Who?
Christy Stevenson, the communications advisor.
And what was the nature of that conversation, or multiple conversations if there were?
We spoke because of the Wall Street Journal story that we have discussed.
And were you conveying similar concerns?
Yes.
And what did Ms. Stevenson tell you during that conversation?
She told me that Leader Jeffries was interested in doing an interview. And then after the interview took place, she called me to express frustration with the reporters because, as had been the pattern that we'd identified with interviews they'd done with other Democratic members of Congress, the focus was overwhelmingly on negative claims that had been made by Republicans instead of giving Leader Jeffries, as someone who had worked closely with President Biden, an opportunity to give his experience.
You said, to continue on this, you've been tracking what some of these members had said to the Wall Street Journal reporter, and mentioned that they go back to Senator Murray and Representative Meeks. At any point during this time, were you receiving any audio recordings or transcripts from the interviews these members were giving with the Wall Street Journal?
Senator Murray's team offered to send me an audio recording because they were distressed at what they viewed as the unfair nature of the interaction, and they wanted us to be aware that they thought the story was not being prepared in a fair manner.
And did any other member of Congress or senator or their staffs provide you with any audio recordings or transcripts of their interviews?
Christy Stevenson gave me a transcript to demonstrate why she thought the reporters were acting unfairly.
And Christy Stevenson, she was the communications director for Leader Jeffries.
I don't know her title, but she's a communications advisor to him.
Understood. Did you ever ask congressional staff or Senate staff to record calls or make transcripts with reporters?
I don't believe so.
Do you know if Leader Jeffries was aware that a transcript was being made of his conversation?
I would be very surprised if he was not aware.
But you don't know.
I don't know.
We will stop it there and go off the record.
You would like to?
I do. In the White House under Joe Biden, I worked my heart out for a president who fought for values I believe in to my core. I witnessed leadership that I respect. I saw a candidate demonstrate grit and resolve during a primary in which we were counted out. Then I saw a president apply experience, strength, and compassion as he achieved unprecedented things while still being counted out, like defeating Big Pharma so Medicare could negotiate lower drug costs. That meant a lot to me because every day of my life until he passed away, my dad had to pay for Crohn's medication. His grandfather, a poor farmer, had the same excruciatingly painful disease, but could not afford treatment. Similarly, every modern president talked about bringing manufacturing back to America, and many of them tried in good faith. But Joe Biden did it. Growing up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, I knew what it meant for our neighbors in High Point when the furniture building capital of the world lost jobs that went overseas. I was proud to support Joe Biden as president because we believe in the same values. In the White House, it was universally understood that Joe Biden was in charge. That is completely consistent with my personal experience with the president. Now someone else with a very different character is in charge. Every Republican on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee voted to add $3.4 trillion to the national debt in tax welfare for the rich. Now the committee is spending taxpayer dollars investigating Joe Biden, an honorable man under whom the economy performed far better than it is today, while turning a blind eye to corruption under Donald Trump. As illegal tariffs raise the costs that Trump promised to lower, the sitting president is profiting off of the American people. He has sold special access to whomever bought the most of his cryptocurrency. He is illegally trying to take over the Federal Reserve, which Republican economists warn will increase inflation. He accepted a $400 million luxury jet from Qatar, a government that funds Hamas. The president's son, Donald Trump Jr., started a private club called Executive Branch for wealthy people who want to influence the administration. The president pardoned felons who assaulted police officers on January 6th and who intended to kill members of Congress and Vice President Mike Pence. Ghislaine Maxwell, a convicted child sex trafficker and Jeffrey Epstein's top accomplice, was recently transferred to a minimum security facility that the former warden of a supermax prison calls a country club. To my knowledge, none of the above are being investigated. As a taxpayer and private citizen, I feel that is wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. We just have one quick question. In the prior hour, you answered affirmatively to several conversations you had with individuals. I just want to get it clear for the record. You had conversations with those individuals regarding the president's health and fitness because they're related to press inquiries regarding the president's health and fitness and not your concerns regarding the president's health and fitness, correct?
That is correct.
That's all first.
Mr. Bates, before we continue on, did you share your opening statement with anyone today before the interview?
Other than your counsel?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Other than your counsel?
My counsel.
Do you know if it was leaked to the media?
I have not seen any reporting since I have been here.
That's not what I asked you. Do you know if your opening statement was leaked to the media?
I have not seen my phone or feed since we've entered here.
Did you intend for your opening statement to be leaked to the media?
I intended for it to be public.
Thank you.
Did you share it with anyone besides your counsel?
My counsel,
Anyone besides your counsel?
no.
It got, I think, brought up briefly in our first hour. Did you ever speak with, write with, or otherwise correspond with Mr. Jake Tapper and or Mr. Alex Thompson to provide details, materials, or background information for their book, Original Sin?
I spoke with Alex Thompson.
Do you remember when you spoke to Mr. Thompson?
It would have been either late last year or early this year, I think.
And what did you talk about, Mr. Thompson?
We spoke about my belief that while it made sense for us to want to turn the page on immigration practices during Donald Trump's first term that were inhumane, I thought we had been too credulous towards some activist groups when it came to the way we did border security policy. We also spoke about claims he had been given by sources about the president's health and my point of view about those claims. And he briefed me on some sections of the book that dealt with me personally.
And what did you discuss as a part of those sections in the book that mentioned you personally?
I remember being concerned that part of it could be interpreted as though I communicated to fellow administration officials that it would seem disloyal if they did not do interviews for stories on which I was working. And I asked him, did anyone tell you that they felt in any way pressured by me? And he said no.
I'm sorry, before you said that you spoke about the portions of the book that mentioned you, you said that you also spoke about your point of view of claims, I believe, that were made in the book. What are you referencing when you refer to that?
I disagree with the overall thrust of the book, and so I was making my case for why.
How did you make your case?
For one thing, I remember mentioning that the fact we advocated for a public debate that, if I'm remembering correctly, the Trump campaign did not immediately agree to, that's hard to reconcile with the false allegation of a cover-up.
Why were you advocating for an early debate?
I was not on the campaign. I was at the White House during this time.
I don't think he meant that he was personally advocating for an early debate.
I was aware the
campaign was.
campaign had done so
I see.
because that was public knowledge.
Were you aware why anybody was advocating on the campaign then was advocating for an early debate?
They felt that the president would acquit himself well.
I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to be confrontational. I don't understand why the president acquitting himself well lends itself to there being an early debate.
That is my understanding, that they thought there would be a contrast between the two that was favorable to President Biden.
Is it fair to say that you, in your role in the White House, had been confronting questions from reporters for most, if not all, of your stint in the White House regarding the president's age, health, or ability to do the job?
There were questions from reporters each year.
Do you think that played a role in the decision to have an early debate?
No.
Just to clarify, were you a source for the book Original Sin by Mr. Thompson and Mr. Tapper?
Not to my knowledge. Just, I want to make sure I'm being clear about the off-record conversation we were just talking about. As far as I know, none of that was used in the book, and I disagree with the overall thesis.
Understood. Do you know the name or names of any unnamed sources from the White House that talked with Mr. Tapper and Mr. Thompson?
I don't know of who is in full quoted in the book. I have not read the full book. I do know some individuals who spoke with them.
Who are those individuals?
Mike Donnellan, Steve Richetti. I believe there were others from the senior staff who shared their point of view, but I don't know who in full.
Do you know anybody from the cabinet who was interviewed for that book?
I don't know.
Did you play a role in, it's my understanding that there was, if not a directive, a suggestion from the communication folks in the White House to senior staff to have interviews with either Mr. Thompson or Mr. Tapper. Did you play a role in facilitating or coordinating those interviews?
No.
Do you know who did?
I don't know who in total had worked on it. I remember Ben LeBolt, the communications director, had given input.
During this time before the book officially came out, do you recall any conversations in the White House about the forthcoming book, Original Sin? Were there discussions about the book amongst the White House staff?
Yes.
Do you recall who were part of those conversations?
I don't know who in total. I spoke to colleagues on the press team, communications team, others with whom I was in regular touch.
And who would those people be?
Ben LeBolt, Kareem Jean-Pierre. I don't remember any other conversations, but the overall point of view was that there was a preferred outcome on the part of the authors.
Did anyone inform you or other staff that you're aware of not to speak with Mr. Tapper or Mr. Thompson?
No.
Did you discourage anyone from speaking with Mr. Tapper or Mr. Thompson?
No.
Same sort of question. Did you ever speak with, write with, or otherwise correspond with Chris Whipple to provide details, materials, or background information for his book, Uncharted: How Trump Beat Biden-Harris and the Odds in the Wildest Campaign in History?
I did talk to Chris Whipple because he approached the White House with a fact-checking question for the book.
And what specifically did you talk about with Mr. Whipple?
I believe it had to do with the president's legislative agenda within the first 2 years.
Are you aware of anyone else speaking with Mr. Whipple for his book, Uncharted?
Ron Klain.
Anyone else?
No.
Were you a source for this book?
Only if the kind of fact-checking discussion we mentioned would qualify. It would not to me.
Understood. And then same kind of question, did you speak with, write with, or otherwise correspond with Josh Dawsey, Tyler Pager, or Isaac Arnsdorf for their book 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and the Democrats Lost America?
I spoke briefly with Tyler Pager.
And what did you discuss?
We discussed the book by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson.
What specifically?
We agreed that the book seemed to have a faulty foundation for many of the core assertions it makes.
And were you a source for this book?
I do remember us speaking briefly in a way where I believe it was off the record, and so it would have been prohibited for me to be a source, but I don't remember the exact subject.
Understood. Also understand that Ms. Jean-Pierre has a forthcoming book, I believe comes out next month. Did you speak with Ms. Jean-Pierre or any of her other authors about her book?
I did speak with her about her book.
And what did you discuss?
Sorry, I'm trying to silence my phone. I learned about the book when it was announced in the press, and I received questions from reporters about her making the decision to become an independent, no longer be a Democrat. So I mentioned that I was receiving these to her. I wanted to hear from her because I did not know that that was coming. And I also asked her out of curiosity if there was anything about me in her book, because it was about the time period when we were working together.
Were you a source for any other books that you're aware of, or speak with any other authors?
I spoke briefly with John Allen and Amy Parnes.
And what did you discuss with each of them?
It was one conference call, and I don't remember a lot about it, but I believe they were mainly asking things that had to do with the candidate change when the president withdrew from the race.
And again, I won't hold you to an exact date, but do you have a rough time frame about when this conversation would have occurred?
Just that it would have been after the president left the race.
And likely still while you were working at the White House?
I was still working there.
Understood.
Just to back up, with Mr. Jean-Pierre's book, is there in fact anything about you in that book, as far as you know?
She told me no.
And what is your understanding of what that book will be about?
She did describe it to me. It was a very brief explanation. I expected to touch on her time in the White House and to talk about her views on contemporary political issues, but I don't know much about it.
Are you friends with Ms. Jean-Pierre?
Yes.
Do you get the impression that she is disillusioned or otherwise disappointed regarding her time in the White House? To the extent you know.
No.
Based on your personal perception working for President Biden, by the end of his term in office, did you notice that he was not as mentally sharp as when he began his term in office?
I had faith in his sharpness. I had noticed some physical changes.
What were those physical changes?
He would walk a little slower, and I was aware, because of the summaries we released of his physical, that had to do with spinal arthritis and an injury to his foot from when he was playing with his dog.
Of course, President Biden has literally aged, as we all do. But did you notice any other signs of aging by President Biden since when you first met him?
I don't believe so.
And just so I'm clear, that you said that you have faith in President Biden's sharpness. The question was actually, did you notice any change in it? Have you noticed a change in President Biden's sharpness from the time that you first met him to the end of his time in office?
No.
You believe his ability to answer questions is the same as when you first met President Biden?
Yes.
As far as you are aware, President Biden's daily schedule in terms of when he goes to sleep is the same as when you first met him?
I don't know when he goes to sleep.
As far as when President Biden would leave the Oval Office for the residents, that didn't change from your time in the White House?
I don't know when he would leave the Oval, but I do know that he would work into the night after leaving the Oval.
How do you know that?
Because I would hear from colleagues about interactions, about late night phone calls where he would reach out to, say, a member of the Congressional Affairs team to ask them to look into something that he was interested in. There were indications of that kind.
During President Biden's term in office, did you ever receive any outreach from people outside of the White House that had concerns of President Biden's mental sharpness, age, ability to be president?
I remember that happening in reaction to media.
Who were these individuals?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
And what did you tell them?
They would have been reacting to stories or to kinds of coverage that they had seen, and they would have questions about the coverage and my view of it, and I would offer it to them.
What sorts of things would encompass your view that you would convey to them?
Often that there was important context that was not given its due in the reporting.
What sort of context was lacking?
Well, if if there had been, say, a video that went viral and it did not include a vital detail to understanding the video, there would be coverage of those kinds of, that kind of online content.
Same time frame during President Biden's term in office, did you ever hear any concerns from other White House staff about President Biden's age, mental acuity, or his ability to be president?
I remember concerns that dealt with coverage where people thought it was a fixation of the press, and that it seemed as though there had been deliberate choices on the part of some in management to impose that subject more than would be typical.
Some in management, who would that be referring to?
Decision makers at mainstream media organizations.
But no one in the White House ever came to you, outside of media coverage context, as a friend, as a colleague, and say, we have concerns with President Biden's mental abilities, his age, his ability to be president?
No.
Do you think voters were concerned that President Biden was mentally or cognitively unfit to serve as president?
I'm aware there was polling that showed this was something that was on the minds of some voters. And I'm also aware that this was a subject that was pretty forcefully kept on their minds by the press.
So do you think the voters' concerns were about President Biden were wrong in this aspect?
Yes.
Do you contribute their being wrong to the media?
In part.
In part, what are the other parts that you contribute this problem or this concern of the voters to be from?
Also to right-wing actors who were very diligent about portraying him in a bad light, usually unfairly.
Do you believe that the voters' concerns with President Biden's age or his ability to be president or his cognitive abilities, do you believe that issue is actually on age, or is that just a euphemism of something worse?
Can you rephrase the question? I'm not sure.
Sure. The way it was often presented to the public was concerns with President Biden's age. Do you think the concern was actually his numerical age, or was age just a euphemism for other concerns, such as his cognitive decline?
I think that would depend on the audience, and I can speak for myself.
Please.
I'm saying my own view. I don't know what those people thought.
Switching gears a little bit here, when did you first meet President Biden?
We first met actually when I was in college. It was very brief.
And what was the context of when you first met?
It was at a DNC winter conference meeting in Washington in 2007, and I had come to it with some friends.
So this was just like in a photo line or something like that, or did you have a conversation?
It was a photo line kind of conversation. It was very brief.
Understood. What is your relationship like with the other members of President Biden's family? So, for example, First Lady Jill Biden.
We interacted occasionally. It was always positive.
And by occasionally, is that daily, weekly, monthly?
Less often than monthly. I did not do a great deal of work with the East Wing.
Understood. How about your relationship with Hunter Biden?
During the campaign and the first years in the White House, my portfolio included coverage of the president that also pertained to Hunter Biden. And I spoke with him infrequently about that. I also saw him infrequently at the White House, and we would greet one another.
Sorry, so another way, frequency that you were meeting with or discussing things with Hunter Biden, is that more of like a daily, weekly, monthly?
No, I would say probably in the neighborhood of 10 times ever.
Okay. Did you notice Hunter Biden appearing in the White House more towards the end of President Biden's presidency?
I don't know. I wasn't always aware when he was around.
Understood. How about your relationship with James Biden?
I've spoken to him probably in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 times, and the last time that I remember would have been during the 2020 campaign.
And
Can I ask a question? Has anyone ever asked you to lie in your job?
No.
Have you ever felt like you were lying to the press in your job?
No.
Were you in the 2020 campaign? Were you part of in the course of your work? Were you dealing with the news regarding the discovery of Hunter Biden's laptop?
Yes.
And did you formulate a response to any question that might arise regarding Hunter Biden's laptop?
I did give statements about that topic.
Did you recommend that the president or others attribute the laptop to possible Russian disinformation?
I remember that there were many national security experts and intelligence experts who felt that what was happening bore the hallmarks, I think was their phrasing, of a Russian attempt at manipulation.
And that was wrong, right? The laptop was real. Is that correct?
I don't see that as a binary because the chain of custody is not fully known.
I'll introduce as Exhibit 2 the interview with Gary Shapley, dated March 26, 2023, conducted by the Committee on Ways and Means. I will read from page 12. In October 2019, the FBI became aware that a repair shop had a laptop allegedly belonging to Hunter Biden and that the laptop might contain evidence of a crime. The FBI verified its authenticity in November of 2019 by matching the device number against Hunter Biden's Apple iCloud ID. I will also introduce as Exhibit 3 a motion filed by Special Counsel David Weiss, a response to a motion filed by Hunter Biden. And I will read from page 7. In August 2019, IRS and FBI investigators obtained a search warrant for tax violations for the defendant's Apple iCloud accounts. In response to that warrant, in September 2019, Apple produced backups of data from various of the defendant's electronic devices that he had backed up to his iCloud account. Investigators also later came into possession of the defendant's Apple MacBook Pro, which he had left at a computer store that was filed. End quote. This was filed in the District of Delaware in federal court. I will enter those as. So I'll ask you again. Was the laptop real?
I was not aware of that information at the time, to be clear. I would need to review what you've just walked through.
Were you unaware of the Hunter Biden prosecution?
Not until shortly after the campaign.
Did you ever ask Joe Biden if the allegations regarding his son were true?
No.
Did you ever communicate to the media whether the allegations were true?
Which allegations?
Regarding Hunter Biden's business dealings?
There were a number of allegations made about those.
That Hunter Biden, you're right, let me rephrase. Did you ever communicate to the press whether Hunter Biden was or was not peddling influence to his father?
I don't remember, but I do remember that the former vice president, in my view, handled himself honorably in this area. And I do not think that that can be said of the person in the White House now at all.
Mr. Bates, that's not what I asked you at all.
The answer was he didn't recall in response to your question. So next question.
You don't recall whether you ever communicated to the press regarding the president's son, Hunter Biden, and his business dealings with, for example, CEFC?
I remember CEFC. You would need to specify to me allegations that are being made.
Did you ever communicate with Hunter Biden regarding the veracity of the information on the Hunter Biden laptop that was introduced in federal court?
Which information are we talking about?
The information found on Hunter Biden's laptop.
So you're asking whether he ever verified the authenticity of that information?
I'm asking whether he ever communicated with Hunter Biden about the veracity of the information on the Hunter Biden laptop.
No.
Going back to your relationships with other members of President Biden's family, what was your relationship like with Valerie Biden Owens?
I met her a small number of times. They were brief interactions.
During your time in the White House?
Yes, and during the 2020 campaign.
Same question for Ashley Biden.
We first met during the president's term. believe we've met twice.
And same for Naomi Biden.
I have seen her more because we have mutual friends.
If I see her more, what kind of frequency would that be?
Not very often, but we've gone to drinks together, that kind of thing.
Get coffees with her?
No.
Dinners?
I'm sorry, was that no?
Correct, no. She invited us to a party at her home in what I believe would have been 2023.
Understood. During your time in the Biden administration, how often did you personally see or interact with President Biden in person?
I don't know how to ballpark that exactly, but I saw him a lot, especially when it came to travel, because I was one of the press aides who would go as the spokesperson when the press secretary was unavailable, and accompanying him to the Hill when we were trying to advance priorities of his in Congress. And you would also see him in the hallways.
So outside of, travel or being a part of the official pool, how often would you have meetings with President Biden?
So just to clarify, I was not in the pool.
Yes.
I was one of the staffers that was often doing movements with him, going to sites. I was not just with the press.
Understood.
So I saw a lot of things that they would not.
Understood. But outside of those times of travel or going with the president to the Hill or other various appearances, how often would you meet with President Biden?
As far as formal meetings, not very frequently, but interactions and up close, firsthand experiences, I had a lot.
And those experiences would be the travel or passing the president in the hallway, that sort of thing.
And there were times he would come to the press office.
And how often would he come to the press office?
Not very often. Maybe a couple of times a year.
Did the frequency of which he came to the press office change from when his term first started to when his term ended?
I think it was most frequent the first year and the last year.
Have you ever been on Marine One?
No.
Have you ever been on Air Force One?
Yes.
Roughly how many times were you on Air Force One?
Many times.
10, 20, 50, somewhere in between there, like a ballpark estimate. I'm not going to hold you to a specific number.
I believe it would be above 35.
And you briefly touched on this, but how often would you usually travel with the president?
It would depend. We took turns going to Delaware when he would return home, or official events, political events, vacations. I went to Nantucket when they were there for Thanksgiving in 2022, for example.
Have you ever been to the president's Wilmington house?
Yes, I have not been inside it though.
And then same question, have you ever been to the president's Rehoboth beach house?
I have been outside of it.
Have you ever been to Camp David?
During the Obama administration, not while Joe Biden was president.
How often would you attend fundraisers for then former Vice President Biden on the 2020 campaign?
I don't believe I did any because in my role, I was almost always in the Philadelphia headquarters, or after COVID, I was working from home.
And then did you attend any fundraisers for President Biden during the 2024 campaign?
Yes, in my official capacity, because there are White House reporters and White House staff who travel with him.
Do you remember which campaign events you attended?
I don't remember in full, but they would have been mainly in Maryland and Virginia.
Understood. Going into a little bit more depth of your experience on the 2020 campaign, actually, before we even get to that, you worked on Secretary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, is that correct?
Yes.
And what was your role during that campaign?
North Carolina Communications Director.
And then when did you join President Biden's 2020 campaign?
Shortly before launch in the spring of 2019.
And did someone approach you to join the campaign, or did you approach somebody that you wanted to join the campaign?
I told Kate Bedingfield, who was a former boss of mine, that I would be interested.
And what was your official role or roles on the 2020 presidential campaign?
I was the director of rapid response.
And what would that entail?
I acted as a national spokesperson, fielding questions from the press, giving statements, giving communications and messaging advice. I managed a team once we had the resources to expand. And I was one of the main points of contact for the national press.
And who would have been your most direct superior in that role?
Bill Russo and Kate Bedingfield.
Did you travel with then Vice President Biden during the 2020 campaign?
The only thing, I did not travel with him for this, but I helped staff a rally in Philadelphia that was the formal main launch event. I believe that is the only campaign event I went to because my job required me to be in the headquarters.
And during your time on the 2020 campaign, did you have a sense that anyone, may have distrusted you because you had worked for the Clinton campaign in 2016?
No.
How often would you meet with President or then Vice President Biden's senior staff on the 2020 campaign?
Frequently.
Daily, weekly, monthly?
Daily.
Did this include Bruce Reed?
Yes, but he was not someone I dealt with as often as that.
Then how about Ron Klain?
Decently often.
Annie Tomasini?
Some.
Some, how, is there another way you can define some?
Roughly the same as Bruce, most likely.
Ashley Williams?
Some.
Some is in the same amount as Ms. Tomasini and Mr. Reed.
Probably a little less.
How about Anthony Bernal?
Some.
Some as in the same as Ms. Tomasini and Mr. Reed, or different?
Less than that.
Anita Dunn?
Often.
Daily, weekly?
Multiple times a week.
Is there, as part of your role, meeting with these, senior campaign staff, what were the topics of your discussions that you'd be bringing to them?
It could vary quite a lot because I was one of the main spokespeople who was fielding questions from national media and working on stories. So it would really depend on what was happening in the news and with the campaign, but it would cover a lot of ground.
How often would you meet with Jill Biden during the 2020 campaign?
Very rarely.
And then after the 2020 election, you had a role on the transition team, is that correct?
Yes,
What was your role?
I believe the title was spokesperson.
And in that position, is that similar responsibilities to what you had in your role in the 2020 campaign?
Some similarities, but on the transition, most of my work had to do with cabinet nominees we were announcing. I was working under Jen Psaki, who was managing that portion of the transition's work.
And managing the cabinet nominees, what did that entail?
It had to do with taking reporters' questions about which people might be in the running for certain jobs. It would have to do with announcements when we were ready to make decisions public. And it would have to do with highlighting those people's qualifications and records and disclosures that they would make as part of the process.
Were you interacting with these cabinet nominees?
Some of them.
Which of those?
Secretary Blinken, Secretary McDonough.
Anyone else that you would frequently be interacting with?
I didn't deal with them frequently, but I did work with them around the announcements of them being chosen as nominees. I don't remember any other, Neera Tanden, because she was nominated for OMB.
What about Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, I did talk with him. He was a little bit different because that was not a Senate confirmable position.
Sure.
But I did handle the press for his announcement and some of the stories related to it.
What about Secretary Vilsack?
I don't believe so.
Did you know any of Blinken, McDonough, Sullivan from previous work you had done in the government?
I had met Dennis McDonough a few times during the Obama administration. I was in touch with him at times during the 2020 campaign because he was a supportive voice. Secretary Blinken I first met not long after I joined the Biden campaign. And the same for Jake Sullivan.
What do you mean by Mr. McDonough was I'm sorry, I just forgot what you said, a positive voice? Is that what you said, a supportive voice?
A supportive voice, just as is common for any presidential campaign, you are going to be in touch with high-profile individuals who are supportive and who want to express that support.
So was Mr. McDonough somebody you could go to if you needed to get a message out?
I'm trying to remember which specific things we worked on. I remember him giving interviews in which he explained why he supported the then former vice president.
Is that why Mr. McDonough was one of the voices that you turned to push back against the narrative about Joe Biden's age or health or ability to do the job?
I went to him because he had worked closely with President Biden in his role as Secretary of Veterans Affairs.
But he had been supportive. He had been a supportive voice from the jump, right?
I don't believe he endorsed from the jump. I remember him being supportive during the general election.
Thanks.
Just to re-clarify, moving into your responsibilities when you started in the White House, who did you first report to?
In the White House?
Yes.
Jen Psaki.
And that changed when Ms. Psaki left, is that correct?
Yes, it changed to Corinne Jean-Pierre.
Did you have anyone that reported to you?
Robin Patterson, who was an assistant press secretary, reported to me for a time.
And then in your role as a deputy press secretary and spokesman for President Biden, what was your main portfolio of issues that you covered in the White House?
It was diverse. It could vary based on what was salient in the news, but I handled press about our efforts to pass major legislation, especially the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. I was involved in budget debates. I was the press office's point person for judicial nominations. Eventually, most political matters the White House was in a position to speak about within the rules. And often in the areas where the president was being personally attacked.
So would this include crisis communications sort of thing?
Yes.
And when dealing with crisis communications, who would you usually work with?
That could vary a lot. It depended on the subject.
Did you work with Ian Sams?
Yes.
What was the nature of your work with Ian Sams?
There were stories that would overlap between the areas to which we'd been assigned. So it would have to do with oversight investigations. It would have to do with, I think, mainly things that stem from that. Oh, and things that had to do with DOJ.
We kind of briefly touched on this earlier as well. Did you have access to the White House residence?
No.
Did you ever go to the White House residence?
Not beyond the first floor, or I don't know if it's technically the first floor, but the floor where the East Room is.
Was there any, did you notice people that had residence access? Did they have a special demarcation on their badge or anything like that?
That I don't know.
Do you know if anyone else had White House residence access?
I don't know who had it.
Are you aware of who most frequently visited the White House residence?
No.
And the time that you visited the residence first floor, or whatever, by the East Room, what was the purposes usually for your visits?
There could be many purposes. If there were press events happening there, because those are often venues for public events, or if we were hosting a certain constituency, there'd be parties there, holiday parties, other receptions, so it could vary.
And then during your time in the Biden administration, how often would the press team have meetings generally?
Very often.
Daily?
Yes.
And how often would the press team broadly meet with senior White House staff?
What do you mean by broadly?
There's probably different variations of if just you and Miss Saki or Miss Jean-Pierre would go meet with senior staff versus if a larger coalition of the press team would go meet with senior staff. So just starting from like a 30,000 foot view, how often would the press team be interacting with the senior advisors of the White House, senior staff?
The way that it worked, which to my understanding is consistent with every administration, is that various spokespeople had their particular assignments, and it is very normal for them to interact with senior staff about those assignments. In my experience, it's very rare to have some kind of a full press team meeting with one of those people, but for individuals working on issues that those senior people also have a role in, that is very common.
So you would presumably, some type of issue that you covered, you would go meet with certain senior advisors, senior staff, based off issues you covered.
Yes.
And how can you tell us broadly how the press team operated, in the sense that you understood the president's positions on different issues you covered?
Well, the people who took point on certain subjects would become well-versed quickly, because you would work on rollouts of proposals, you would work on defending our positions against criticism or figuring out ways to advance the case for them. So they would be learning about those constantly.
And granted, in politics, positioning and messaging can change sometimes depending on what's going on. How would you learn about what the particular position of the White House is on something?
That could take different forms. You could be told by different senior staff. It could be that you're emailed about something that is coming down the pike.
And would issues, rephrase, if you were getting a new position, would you hear from Bruce Reed about what the president's position is on that matter?
It could be. It would just depend.
And same goes for Mike Donnellan.
Well, Mike's role had more to do with overall messaging, and I don't remember talking with him about policy specifics a great deal when it came to learning new positions. I would talk with him about positions, but I don't think he was often someone I talked to about new ones.
Did President Biden tell the press team what his positions were in any instance?
Yes.
How often did he do that?
He discussed his positions when he came back to the press office.
Thank you.
We will stop it there. We'll go through.
Colleagues have alleged the existence of a cover-up with respect to President Biden's mental acuity. In the interest of making sure we have a clear record, you have no knowledge that Joe Biden was at any point in time mentally unable to execute the duties of his office of president, the office of the president, correct?
Correct.
And to your knowledge, did anyone in the White House at any point during Joe Biden's presidency ever make decisions to issue any form of clemency, pardons, or otherwise in Joe Biden's name without his knowledge or authorization?
No.
Did you ever make decisions to issue any form of clemency, pardons, or otherwise in Joe Biden's name without his knowledge or authorization?
No.
And again, at any point during the Biden presidency, did anyone in the White House, to your knowledge, ever issue any other type of executive order without President Biden's knowledge or authorization?
No, and that would be very contrary to everything that I experienced about the way the White House worked.
Thank you. So to your knowledge, all decisions to issue any form of clemency, pardons, or otherwise, and all executive orders during the Biden administration were made by President Biden alone?
Yes, and to give you a sense of what I lived through, people were very diligent about making sure that they were staying within parameters that he had set, and that would even extend to press statements, language that would be in releases. People were very conscientious about ensuring that he had signed off on things that compared to other places I have worked, campaigns, other administrations, that the level of check-ins was abnormally high, in fact.
Okay, so basically you went beyond what typically the president would typically sign off on, and other presidents typically would sign off on.
Yes.
Thank you. And apart from any instances in which President Biden delegated authority to Vice President Harris while he was undergoing a medical procedure, did anyone, to your knowledge, ever step in to carry out the duties of the presidency in Joe Biden's place because he was unable to do so?
No.
So, just to be clear, to your knowledge, are you aware of any instance where an executive order issued during the Biden presidency was signed by Autopen without President Biden's knowledge or authorization?
No.
To your knowledge, are you aware of any instance in which the Autopen was used to sign a presidential memorandum issued during the Biden presidency without President Biden's knowledge or authorization?
No.
To your knowledge, are you aware of any instance in which the Autopen was used to sign a pardon issued during the Biden presidency without President Biden's knowledge or authorization?
No.
And to your knowledge, are you aware of any instance in which the Autopen was used to sign an order granting clemency issued during the Biden presidency without President Biden's knowledge or authorization?
No.
We'll go off the record.
Staying with the press team operations we covered in our last hour, Ian Sams told the committee that Ms. Jean-Pierre had a large book or binder of talking points. Are you familiar with this book or binder?
I am familiar with that binder, and I know that every press secretary that I have worked with kept a similar binder.
Did you write talking points for the binder?
Yes.
At whose direction would you write talking points for the binder?
That could vary. I would sometimes do it on my own initiative. She would ask for points about subjects, as would Jen before her. And other officials could say, we expect Y subject to come up. Could you look into this? And you prepare them. That's, in my experience, standard for any White House press office.
And who would those other officials be?
It could be many different people, depending. It could be the Congressional Affairs team if we were getting a lot of questions about an effort to pass legislation. It could be a policy person if they thought that an area under their bailiwick might see more press coverage. It could just vary.
Would that include the senior advisors as well, providing issues to you that may come up?
Yes.
And was there any sort of approval process for adding talking points to the binder?
Yes.
And what was that process like?
That could also change its shape based on the subject and who was working on it. For example, when we were dealing with Hurricane Helene, you would be dealing with the Homeland Security team, National Security team. You would be dealing with the Intergovernmental Affairs team because they were in touch with the state governments and local governments. So it would really shift based on the subject.
Would Ms. Jean-Pierre have final sign-off, though?
Yes.
And did anyone else contribute to the talking points binder?
Yes, in a way that's consistent with what I had observed during the Obama administration and the Biden administration. The various spokespeople would contribute materials about the subjects they covered.
Understood. Switching gears a little bit, beyond our earlier discussion of a specific Wall Street Journal piece, were there any other instances in which you requested or directed a transcript or audio recording of an interview?
There's one thing I want to make sure is clear. When it came to Patty Murray's team sending me the audio, and then Christy Stevenson with Leader Jeffrey's team sending me that transcript, Those materials were offered to me. I did not ask that they happen. I did not know. Just as y'all are well aware, it's standard practice for Hill staff to record, interviews in the hallway. And I believe that was the setting for Patty Murray. But those materials were offered to me by staff who felt that the reporters were pursuing the story in an unfair way.
Understood. Are there any other instances in which staff provided you transcripts or audio recordings?
It's possible, but I don't remember anything specific. And you mean people from outside of the administration?
Yeah, from members' offices or senators' offices or cabinet officials' offices even.
It's possible I was sent something about cabinet members in a manner that would be in line with how any press office gets updates about people who are within the broader family, talking to reporters, making statements, because you want to coordinate.
But more than just updates, transcripts or audio recordings, would you get those from cabinet members, staffs, or themselves?
Sometimes.
Sometimes being, how frequently would that be?
Quite rarely that I got them.
At any point, would you call reporters to have them shut down stories about President Biden and his health or duties or ability to perform the duties of the presidency?
But what do you mean by shut down?
You may have gotten a tip that so-and-so was going to write a story about President Biden's mental decline or inability to carry out the duties of the presidency. And so based off that, would you ever call reporters and try to have those stories not come out?
My standard practice on any subject, whether it had to do with his age, policy, anything else, was if I learned that there was an assertion that I thought was unfounded or something that needed to be fact-checked or something that required extra context for people to understand the full picture, I would advocate for that to be done.
But outside of that, you never told a reporter not to run a story.
I don't have that right.
And you mentioned you handled the DOJ portfolio.
For roughly the first 2 years, I would often do the White House press office's work when we thought it was appropriate dealing with DOJ.
Were you involved in the White House's efforts in the Special Counsel Robert Hur's investigation?
A little.
What do you mean by a little?
By that time, Ian Sams had joined the staff, and that was in his portfolio. So I consulted with him rarely.
Other than rarely consulting, did you assist Mr. Sams at all with the comm strategy regarding the Hur report or its investigation?
A little bit.
Were you aware that Ian Sams made the claim that no one would need the audio tape of the Hur interview with President Biden?
I don't remember that specifically. I do remember the release of the transcript.
And did the press team, or more broadly the communications team, did they discuss the area of the Hur report describing President Biden having a poor memory?
That was discussed.
Who were part of those discussions?
The people I remember were Ben LeBolt, Kareem, Anita Dunn. Ian would have been a part of that. I was not a participant in most of the discussions about it.
In those discussions you were a participant in, what was discussed about the Her report, finding that President Biden had a poor memory?
The consensus was that that was a gratuitously negative and off-topic set of claims to add to the report.
I've heard that term, that word actually, gratuitous, used to characterize that line from the report. I've heard it frequently from various people. Do you have any knowledge of any kind of talking point coming down to use that word to describe that line from the report?
I don't remember a set of talking points, but it seems fitting to me.
You stand by the characterization that it was gratuitous to include that in the report?
Yes.
Have you since heard the audio recording of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Her?
I have not.
Do you recall any conversations amongst the press team trying to attempt to remove any parts of the report describing President Biden as having a poor memory?
Removed from the report? No.
Anita Dunn testified to us that the communications and press staff elected to not have President Biden give an interview that would air before the 2024 Super Bowl, out of concern that the interview would focus mostly around the Her report and President Biden having a poor memory as part of that report. Were you involved in any of the discussions about President Biden doing a pre-Super Bowl interview?
I did not work on that directly. I do remember this being discussed with me, and what I recall about it was that there was a feeling that traditionally these interviews had been less political, less about governance, because people are tuning in to watch a game. And there was a suspicion that CBS wanted to focus more than was the norm on political governing issues, and I thought that that would be tone deaf for us to do.
What do you mean by political governing issues?
That as when someone tunes in to watch the Super Bowl, they're not really interested in politics, right? And we thought that it would be annoying to viewers if here's the president talking about news of the day with whomever the interviewer would be, like, and less about just the American tradition.
But isn't that, how is that different than how it is for every Super Bowl interview, or a pre-Super Bowl interview with every other president? Why this time was it decided that it shouldn't happen?
What I remember being told at the time was that there was a concern that CBS wanted to focus on those kinds of things more than would be the norm for past presidential Super Bowl interviews.
I believe these conversations happened before the official report was made public. Had you seen the report before it was made public, the Her report?
No.
Were there any, I'll disregard that. Paraphrasing a little bit, the Her report concluded that President Biden would present himself to a jury as sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Just for the record, you disagree with that conclusion?
Yes.
And why do you disagree with that conclusion?
Because I think that President Biden is someone who presents himself with a lot of dignity, and that a jury would see him in a respectful way.
Did you discuss the Her investigation or the report with President Biden himself?
No.
Were there any other reactions inside the White House about the Her report?
I mainly remember what we've already discussed.
It's been,
Can I ask a follow-up? You said that if, that President Biden would present himself to a jury in a dignified way. Do I have that right?
Yes.
That would, and presumably he would be able to acquit himself of any charge in that situation.
As he did.
It's my understanding that part of Special Counsel Herr's reason to not charge the president was because he believed that he would present himself to a jury as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Is it your contention that Special Counsel Herr should have charged President Biden?
No.
I'm switching gears a little bit. There's been some various reporting that when reporters would come to the White House press team with a story about President Biden and his age or mental acuity issues, that members of the press team would either in public or privately attack those journalists. Obviously don't mean to assume that that is physical attack, but would you ever, verbally tell reporters that they should or should not report on questions of President Biden's age?
I remember repeating to reporters often that President Biden himself had said publicly that as the oldest president at that time, he felt it was fair to scrutinize the subject of his age, and that is something that I mentioned. There were moments where, as we've talked about a little bit here, I felt that there was a desire to increase the proportion of coverage about age because it was not as complicated as talking about the governing process or debates about issues, and I thought that it became outsized, and I communicated this to reporters as well as colleagues. I was far from the only person who felt that way.
Did you ever, let me back up, in an attempt to try to prevent or quash a negative story of President Biden about his age or his mental acuity, did you ever enlist the help of social media influencers or other progressive reporters to either change the topic of discussion or quash those claims of age-related problems of the president?
What I would do, and this is in line with every major communications operation I'm aware of, whether it's at a private company, a campaign, what have you, is if there were segments of articles that we felt were inaccurate or unfair, I would sometimes speak with individuals who I felt would agree to see if they were willing to publicly say so.
And did you ever send, whether it be text messages or signal messages, send aggressive messages to other Democratic operatives about negative news stories you were seeing in the press?
What do you mean by aggressive messages?
Whether it be by, tone, why something is being reported on, stuff of that nature.
I would be in touch with fellow Democrats, particularly staffers for electeds or candidates, because as y'all know, it's common in both parties for people to be in touch with allies like that. And we would talk about many different subjects being covered, things that we thought were worth promoting, things that we thought had flaws that needed to be pointed out.
Did those conversations ever get to the point where you were could be determined that you were acting with a sense of hostility towards these Democrat operatives and colleagues outside of the White House?
I think he's asking whether you were hostile.
I don't remember doing things that I would regard as hostile.
Have you ever yelled at a reporter?
Yes,
You ever cursed at a reporter?
yes.
When was the last time you did that, either of those?
The last time that I remember was a reporter for the New York Times, and it was my final day in the administration. And it was because the New York Times did a story about, as the administration was closing, what is it like around the president? And the reporters, I had been impressed at the level of good faith, and they relayed to me that their determination was the president was very much in charge, very much engaged, and that those who deal with him regularly did not have a view that he was in any way encumbered. And when the story ran, there was a part of it that clashed with what I had been told. And I remember the specific phrasing because it offended me. It said that this story was explaining how staff, I believe the wording was, managed his decline. So I had called the reporter for the story, and I said, wait a minute, when we talked earlier, you had mentioned that this wasn't what your reporting found. And I was told, that's correct, this was inserted by editors, and I don't have control over it, so, and I'm sorry, but you should talk to the editor if you want this changed. So I did that. And when I got in touch with the editor, they told me that that wording, decline, was meant to mean physical decline. And I countered to them, if I tell you my grandmother is in decline, does that mean that she walks a little less slowly? I don't think so. And the conversation did get heated, and I did raise my voice. I later apologized for that, but I think that I think it's reasonable for me to object to that.
Thank you.
Turning now to President Biden's decision to run for re-election in 2024. We'll start with during the 2020 cycle and maybe immediately after the 2020 election. Was it your impression that President Biden was going to be a one-term president?
I don't remember having a sense of whether it would be one or two.
There were never any conversations about that during this time?
Not that I was a part of, outside of reporters would come to us with questions about that, and there was not anything of substance revealed. We were just aware that the reporters had the questions.
Was it your impression that President Biden intended to be a, as he put it, bridge president to a younger generation of Democratic leaders?
I remember that statement, but I did not take that as necessarily meaning that he was not inclined to run for a second term.
Do you think other people did?
You could
if you
attack
want-
it.
if you- I-
I mean, it's an impossible question to answer.
I don't know.
It seems
what
to have
others-
caused some ambivalence. So I was just wondering if anybody ever gave you the impression that they had thoughts about that statement.
I know that I did not take it as meaning he would not run.
When did you first come to understand that President Biden would likely seek re-election in 2024?
I don't remember exactly when I learned this, but it would have been late 2022 or within the first quarter of 23.
And at that time, did you believe President Biden was fit to serve 4 additional years?
I did.
Did you believe he could still win re-election?
Yes.
Did you have any concerns about President Biden running for re-election in 2024?
As someone who's worked in politics for a good while, I can't think of any candidate about whom, for any office, I would have zero concerns ahead of a campaign, because everybody has areas where they will be criticized, everyone has strengths.
And so, based off that statement, what would you say the areas of concerns were for President Biden running for re-election?
By far, the biggest was that because of the way the pandemic disrupted the global economy, inflation had gone up. This was associated with us, and I felt that it was by far our biggest political vulnerability.
Inside of the White House, were there any discussions or considerations of President Biden being physically or mentally incapable of running and serving a second term?
Not that I know of.
Do you believe any White House staff were concerned about President Biden running for re-election in 2024?
Not that I know of.
Were there any discussions or considerations that President Biden may not make it an additional 4 years?
Not that I know of.
Did you have any role, shifting gears ahead a little bit, for the debate between President Biden and President Trump in June of 2024? Did you have any role in prep for that debate leading up to the debate?
No.
Not in Washington?
No.
And you did not travel to Camp David to assist with debate prep?
No.
Were you asked to assist any other person that was involved with debate prep on any talking points or anything like that?
No. The one thing I just want to make sure I'm telling y'all is we got inquiries about debate prep, which has happened every time that I've been involved with an effort where there is a debate upcoming. And I provided some information to those reporters about who had been involved in debate prep, because that's always something they're interested in.
And that only information was about who was involved in debate prep, not how debate prep was going?
It was about who was involved. I believe there were some additional details. You know how reporters always want color and things like that, but I don't remember characterizations of how it was going.
Were you aware, or did you hear of any indication of how debate prep was going from those that were assisting with debate prep?
The only thing that I remember being told was after the debate, I was told that they had expected him to perform better based on how prep had gone.
And going to the debate, it's in a recent interview, I believe it was a podcast or a YouTube interview, Hunter Biden told Andrew Callahan that President Biden was given Ambien to help sleep before the debate. Do you have any knowledge of President Biden being prescribed or taking Ambien?
No.
Did you see President Biden being administered medications, including Ambien, at any point in the White House in 2024 leading up to the debate?
No.
In your opinion, are Hunter Biden's claims of Ambien hindering the president's performance at the debate credible?
I don't know what he was taking or not.
And it's been a few hours, but I think at the beginning of the interview, you said the last time that you had spoken with Hunter Biden was in regard to comments that he had made post after he had done a podcast. Is this what you're referring to?
We did not talk about anything that related to the president's health when we most recently spoke. It was about other things.
Okay. What did you speak about?
And I want to be clear, I don't mean this as confrontational. I just want to be honest about. I was talking to him about how very frequently the current president and members of his family engage in corrupt business activities that if he had done a very small fraction of, I think the phrase I used was Sean Hannity would have a stroke on the ear.
Do you often speak with Hunter Biden about politics?
Not often, no.
And just so I'm clear, did you speak with Hunter Biden at all during the 118th Congress's investigation of Hunter Biden and Joe Biden regarding international business dealings?
I did text with him. I sent him a supportive message on a day that he was coming to testify.
Did you speak with the president the day that he was supposed to testify?
No.
It is my understanding that the president recommended to Hunter Biden that he not testify at one point. Are you aware of any of those conversations?
That I don't know about.
Did you work with Ian Sams in communicating talking points regarding congressional investigations of Hunter Biden?
I did work with Ian sometimes, a little bit, about that.
And what was your contribution to that?
My main contribution was that I had built knowledge about Hunter's background because I had worked on stories that went into it. And so sometimes Ian would make use of that. Do you think this is accurate? Is there something else that is a relevant factor about whatever element of his past being discussed?
And at any point, did you ever speak with Hunter Biden's legal team about investigations being conducted by the House of Representatives?
No.
Did you ever speak with his legal team about investigations being run by the Department of Justice?
No.
Going to the actual debate night itself between President Biden and President Trump, did you watch the June 27th, 2024 debate between President Biden and President Trump?
Yes.
And where did you watch it?
I was at a hotel room in Baltimore.
Who did you watch the debate with?
My wife.
President Biden had a pretty lackluster performance in this debate. Would you agree with that assessment?
I agree with his assessment that it was a bad night and he did not do well.
What do you think made it a bad night and that he didn't do well?
He has spoken to this and I defer to what he said.
What are your personal opinions on why he had a bad night and didn't do well?
My personal opinions are that I know he has mentioned that he was doing a lot of travel around the world during a short time period before the debate itself, and that he was feeling under the weather, as he has discussed. And I also know that this came not long after there were developments concerning Hunter's legal situation that I think on a human level would be stressful for any parent.
Was it your immediate reaction watching and immediately after the debate that it was either not going well or had gone badly?
I remember in real time thinking that he was not doing well, But I also remember thinking, as I saw tweets and other reactions, that criticism was over-torqued. And it reminded me, to a degree, of watching the first debate between then President Obama and Mitt Romney, where Obama did not do his best, but I think that often there can be a self-perpetuating feedback loop where especially talking heads like to over-dramatize whatever has just happened.
I was trying to go back and to prepare for this interview, to go back and read the Andrew Bates archived tweets and what you tweeted immediately after the debate. But I couldn't, they're not on there. I don't know why that is. Have you ever deleted tweets from your official account?
I did delete some, but I do not believe I deleted anything that related to the debate or after.
Okay, it only went back to August of 2024. So I was just, you never made any kind of mass deletion of tweets from that account?
No, that is a surprise to me.
It could just be me not knowing how to work Twitter as well. But
It's also a surprise because there are some folks who like to tweet old things at me, and I still get alerts every so often.
I don't tweet, so I cannot relate to you, but I'm sorry.
It's a healthy practice.
At one point during the debate, President Biden started to stumble in his answer to a question that was asked, and his response was, "We finally beat Medicare." Do you recall that answer?
Yes, I do. And I remember thinking in real time that he would very often, when he was talking about the significance of the Inflation Reduction Act as an accomplishment, he would say, "We finally beat Big Pharma so that Medicare can negotiate lower drug costs." And so I immediately thought that those two had just been switched like it was a flop.
So you didn't have any concerns about his answer to that question, that we finally beat Medicare?
No, I had heard him say we beat Big Pharma so Medicare can negotiate lower drug costs many times.
Mr. Klain told this committee that President Biden, throughout knowing Joe Biden, Mr. Klain has noticed that he would confuse proper nouns. Considering proper nouns seem to be some of the most important nouns, I found that rather concerning. Is it your experience that President Biden would confuse proper nouns?
So I have a dumb question. What exactly is a proper noun?
The capitalized ones.
Oh, okay. I should have paid more attention, but that I don't remember feeling that way.
Did any other White House staffers reach out to you, whether it be text, call, or otherwise, to express thoughts on how they thought the debate went?
Yes, I was in touch with other White House staff, and most I remember feeling that it had not gone well, and we were trying to anticipate coverage and how we would deal with it.
Did anyone express any greater concerns than just it had not gone well?
I remember people being surprised at that and wondering why it had happened, but I don't remember anything beyond that.
Ron Klain testified to us that the June 2024 debate was a uniquely bad night for former President Biden, and he had never seen him appear that way before. Do you agree with Mr. Klain in the sense that it was a uniquely bad night, the debate night?
Yes.
And you'd never seen President Biden struggle in that way before in public speeches or debates?
I had not seen a performance similar to that debate. I remember feeling that he had done well in the previous debates that I had seen.
Do you think that the criticisms of President Biden's performance that night were also gratuitous, like you characterized the lines from the Her report?
Some of it,
You think they were overblown?
yes.
Had you ever seen President Biden lose his train of thought?
I don't remember seeing anything like that happen in my interactions with him.
Had you ever seen President Biden not be able to finish a task scheduled for him to complete?
No. One thing I should mention is just that he has for many years often run long, where especially if he's talking to people for longer than is scheduled. But that has been a thing with him for decades.
Had you ever seen President Biden need increased breaks before being able to complete a task?
No.
And so just to be clear, during the years you worked with President Biden, you'd never seen him appear the way he did on the debate stage with President Trump. And
That's correct.
And just to put a finer point on it, since after the debate, did you ever witness President Biden appear that way again?
No.
following the conclusion of the June 2024 debate, did you have any role in, forgive me, I'm not a press person either, but the traditional spin that happens after debates, did you have any role in that?
That was the campaign. There are limits on how the White House could discuss campaign-related matters, and so we were careful about staying within those. We did answer questions about reactions to the performance from the briefing room to reporters that were working on stories.
And what were some of those reactions that you provided to reporters?
I don't remember particular reactions. They would be in the public record, though.
Were there any, following the debate, were there any conversations about President Biden no longer seeking re-election in 2024?
That did come up because reporters were asking us if he might withdraw. They were also spending a lot of resources covering Democrats who said that they felt he should leave the race.
But no one on the White House staff made any concerns about President Biden remaining to run for re-election?
Not to my knowledge.
And I understand in a spin situation, everybody has to declare that you won the debate, that your candidate wins the debate. And at any point after the debate, did you declare that Joe Biden had won the debate?
I don't remember saying he won. I remember noting in a personal capacity that I had felt negative reactions were overtorqued, and I remember mentioning that in an important exchange with his opponent, the president did get Trump to double down on some of his abortion positions that were felt to be a political liability for the current president's campaign.
And because we're going to walk through the timeline here, but I just want to take a temperature check on where you were at this time. Did you believe at this time that Joe Biden should continue to stay in the race and be the Democratic nominee for president?
Yes.
And maybe I'll just save us some time. Did you, up until the time that Joe Biden announced that he would drop out of the race, did you believe that Joe Biden was the proper candidate to serve, the best candidate to serve as the nominee for the Democrats for the president?
Yes.
Did you ever advocate for President Biden to be more public-facing following the debate?
Yes.
Who did you advocate that to?
I mentioned it to Ben LeBolt and Karine Jean-Pierre.
Did anyone else share your attitude that President Biden should be more public-facing?
I don't know.
Did anyone push back on that idea to you?
No.
And sitting here today, do you think that President Biden should have been more public after the debate?
Yes.
Moving forward to the eventual withdrawal.
Before we do that, President Biden did appear on interviews after the debate, correct?
Yes.
Do you think they went well?
I think that they went all right. I had felt that it would be best if there were more appearances immediately following, such as the rally in North Carolina the next day.
Were you confident that President Biden would not appear as he did during the debate performance?
Yes.
So post-debate, moving towards the eventual withdrawal of President Biden, can you just describe for us the growing pressure from whether it be Democratic members of Congress and the Senate or other political pundits, the pressure they were putting on President Biden to withdraw from the race?
Yes. There was a lot of media coverage about that, and I remember feeling that, like we were talking about a moment ago, often members of the press and commentators will want to overhype recent events so that they can talk about how significant whatever is happening right now is. And I thought that there was disproportionate attention given to any Democrat who said they had concerns or that they felt he should leave the race, and that those were framed as though they spoke for a larger group of people than they did, and that at the same time, it seemed there was active minimization of the majority of Democratic leaders who continued to support him.
Who was putting the most pressure on President Biden to withdraw from the race?
I don't know.
You don't have a personal opinion on that?
I would need a better basis than I have, knowledge-wise, to form one.
Did you communicate with any members of Congress that were pressuring President Biden to drop out?
I don't believe so.
The weekend of July 20th, 2024, the weekend that President Biden would eventually drop out of the race, where were you at that time?
That weekend,
Yes.
I was in Washington.
Did you ever go up to the Rehoboth house of President Biden that weekend?
No.
And when did you first learn that President Biden had officially made the decision to drop out of the race?
I learned when it became public.
Did you ever hear in the week prior to the official announcement, did you ever hear that an announcement may be coming to that effect?
No. What I was told was the opposite.
Were you surprised to learn that President Biden dropped out of the 2024 race?
Yes.
Why were you surprised?
Because we had been receiving a lot of reporter emails, texts, what have you, amplifying any rumor they'd heard from seemingly any Democrat that they expected the president to seriously consider withdrawing or withdrawing. And as we would receive those, I would check in with senior staff to ask if there was any truth to them. Do you think that there is a possible change coming? But I was told no.
And then when the official public announcement was posted, I believe it was a letter, did you have any role in drafting President Biden's July 21st, 2024 letter to drop out of the 2024 race?
No, I just saw it when it was released.
Do you know who did draft the letter?
No.
Sitting here today, do you agree with President Biden's decision to drop out?
Yes.
Why?
I remember that internal polling showed the damage we took from the debate itself was negligible. But there had been such a consistent focus by the news media on any Democrat who had a negative opinion of him continuing that the following weeks did have an impact on his ability to be competitive. And I did not feel that way while we were responding to that pressure. But after I had some time to process what in my life was a very significant set of events, when I looked at some of the public data that showed late the final week that he remained a candidate, Virginia was unprecedentedly gettable for the Republican ticket. I felt that that was impossible not to consider when thinking about the big picture.
I appreciate and find refreshing your honesty about reflection, having it's now being over a year since these events transpired and changing your opinion. A year, similarly with the passage of time, have you considered, do you believe that President Biden was too old to seek re-election?
No.
Did you agree with President Biden's decision to endorse Vice President Harris as the candidate in his place?
I thought that it made sense because the notion that there could be some kind of a rushed ad hoc primary seemed impractical.
And after this dropout, after President Biden dropped out, you remained at the White House until the end of the term. Is that correct?
Almost until the end of the term. They phased the staff out gradually, so I left a few days before it ended.
Did you have any role in preparing for life after the presidency for President Biden?
I remember getting reporter questions about what that would look like, but I don't think that we had much information to give them because it had been less of a focus during that period than it typically would be.
And did you, before leaving the White House, did you help with preparations for the post-presidency transition?
I don't think so. I had asked details about what we could tell the press about it, but I don't remember assisting with anything like that.
Besides speaking with somebody about how you were fielding questions and doing your job, I understand that's your job, is speaking with people in the White House and figuring out how you're going to address communications issues. Throughout your time in the White House, did you ever ask anyone, senior staff, friends around the White House, whether they believe that the president was able to fulfill his duties as president of the United States?
The closest thing I did was tell them that there were stories that got into that area about if there was someone who felt that if someone had concerns, or if there was a story coming about would he run for re-election, I would convey that, but it was not a question that I personally put to anyone.
But there were a good amount of stories on this topic. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And you never just asked somebody whether they believed that if the president was able to do the job?
I already knew their answers because, as you mentioned, this came up from the press a lot, and I had spoken with them about contentions made by others, and I had been given material that I thought was relevant.
How about outside the White House? Did you ever talk with anybody and ask them whether they believe if they think the president was able to do his job, or if he was too old for the presidency?
I may have asked people to get a sense of, how it's always wise to talk to the people in your life who are not very political, because this can get insular. I may have asked people who I use as a helpful gauge for that kind of thing what their views were, but to gain more of an understanding of the political landscape.
But your interactions with President Biden never led you to believe that he was not able to fulfill the duties of the presidency?
No.
And how many times did you interact with President Biden face to face? I'm just where you were interacting with him on a weekly basis?
I would not say weekly, but I did have a lot of interactions with him, especially when we were traveling on Air Force One, when we were going to the Hill, or you would see him around the White House complex. So it was not as often as weekly, but I felt that I had a good amount of time witnessing him.
At least once a month, though, you would see him? Or you would speak with him face to face?
I would see him in person probably a little more than that.
And what's the longest conversation you ever had with him?
The longest conversation that I saw him have would have been over an hour. It was when we were, we came to the Hill for different Democratic caucus meetings. I came to those for the House side and the Senate side.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but my question was not the longest conversation you saw him have, but what was the longest conversation you had with President Biden?
Well, I think that's relevant because you observe a person and their abilities, whether you are talking to them or whether you're seeing them close up talking to other people. The longest conversation of which I was a part would have probably been about 30 to 45 minutes.
What was that discussion about?
I was part of a meeting with him in the Oval before he announced that Ketanji Brown Jackson was his choice for the Supreme Court. And we were talking about the speech that he was going to give, talking about her background, and we were talking about some of the public reactions to the news that she was likely to be named. He is someone who's often interested in if something has recently broken, that it might be helpful to be able to emphasize. So we talked about those things.
And did you ever participate in conversations where you would be giving him stage directions on where to walk out and where to walk in, I suppose, and where to stop?
No, any place in government or politics that I have worked, that would be the role of the advance and the scheduling team, but it was not my role as a press staffer.
And I'm about to wrap up. And when you were having that conversation about Justice Jackson, did you ever have, was President Biden using note cards at any time?
I don't believe so. He had the text of his speech because we were talking about the speech and things that should be added or removed. And I remember I told him, I'm blanking on this man's name, but the mayor of Miami at that time was a Republican, and Justice Jackson's family has roots in that area. And he had said something positive about her family has a history of service here. I think her uncle was a police officer in Miami. And I flagged it for him, and he had reacted positively, and he shouted that out in the speech. He said something like, I just heard the Republican mayor of Miami endorsed her, that sort of thing.
Great. We'll stop right there.
The minority's first hour, you said that President Biden was in charge during his presidency. Has anything
I'm so sorry. I couldn't hear what you said, that President Biden was
in charge?
Sorry.
Has anything we've discussed so far throughout this day changed your testimony or your view that President Biden was in charge during his presidency?
No.
Do you remember earlier today, would it be fair to say you spent a fair amount of time discussing Hunter Biden's laptop with the majority?
I remember that.
Can you think of a more effective way for the Republicans to discredit their own investigation into President Biden's age than by trying to tie it to Hunter Biden's laptop?
You know, go ahead if you have an answer to that.
I feel that there are enormous double standards between criticizing Hunter Biden and Joe Biden in the way that was done with regard to the laptop, and at the same time not investigating the current president selling special access to whoever buys the most of his meme coin, or many other things that are happening right now where the most powerful person in the world is directly profiting off the American people.
Hunter Biden's laptop was tied to the majority's failed impeachment investigation last Congress. I will represent to you that during that 15-month investigation, Oversight Committee Republicans heard more than 80 hours of testimony from nearly 20 witnesses and reviewed more than 100,000 pages of documents. Mr. Bates, do you know if the House of Representatives voted to impeach President Joe Biden during the 118th Congress?
I actually don't remember.
They did not. And your counsel may not want you to answer this, but would you consider Chairman Comer's impeachment investigation a success?
No.
I'm going to enter into mark as Exhibit A, a Washington Examiner article titled "Republicans Exhausted with Comer's Complete Failure to Deliver on Promise to Impeach Biden" report. Mr. Bates, if you are willing to take a look at that first paragraph at the end of the first page, sort of below that recommended story section. I'm sorry, the last paragraph. And then on the first page, it continues with 2 words into the next page. Just for ease of the record, would you mind reading that paragraph?
James Comer continues to embarrass himself and House Republicans, a source close to GOP leadership told The Messenger. He screws up over and over and over. I don't know how Republicans actually impeach the president based on this clueless investigation and lack of leadership.
Go ahead.
Joe Biden is no longer president, correct?
Correct.
And yet, Chairman Comer has launched yet another investigation into President Biden and somehow trying to tie it to Hunter Biden's laptop. Now, there have been allegations of some kind of cover-up regarding President Biden's age or something else. But when you were talking with the majority, you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your position was that after the president's debate with now President Trump, you wanted him to be more public-facing. Is that right?
Yes.
So were you playing some sort of four-dimensional chess here? Were you trying to hide President Biden from the public by wanting him to engage with the public more?
I have always felt that the more he engages with the public, the better he does, because he's a very extroverted person. He's known for staying on rope lines for very long periods of time. He likes to deal with people, and I think that people like what they see of him personally as an empathetic leader.
I'd also like to just go back. I think it was much earlier in the day that our majority colleagues mentioned a book by Mr. Whipple. I'd like to enter into the record, we'll call it Minority Exhibit B. It's an article about a Fox News interview earlier this year with Mr. Whipple, and I will read you the quote. It's an interview. He stated that there is no evidence that Biden was unable to fulfill the duties of Commander-in-Chief. He then went on to say, the notion that this was somehow, Biden's last year was weekend of Bernie's, and there was a cabal running the country with an Autopen is just silly. The notion that they're going to be able to prove that there was this dastardly cover-up on the part of Biden's inner circle is just crazy to me. I think the answer is that this thing goes nowhere. Is that anything surprising to you about that statement coming from Mr. Whipple?
No, that is, what you've read is consistent with my experience, that the staff were very aware of who was in charge and whose approval they needed for any significant decision, and that was President Biden. And I had a lot of conversations with people whose areas reached far outside my own, including Brett McGurk, who was our lead National Security Council staffer for the Middle East during an extremely active time for that part of the world. And he was emphatic about his respect for the president's abilities, having seen him in the Situation Room when we were defending Israel from Iranian missile attacks and other situations that were high stakes.
We've also spent a lot of today talking about what, to me, sounded a lot like the normal contours of your job or someone who has a job like yours. Would that be a fair characterization?
Yes.
You've used things like this as is standard, or this is standard practice, or this is normal at times. Would you say that we've spent a lot of time just hearing in little detail about normal work from someone in your position throughout your time in the White House?
Yes, it reminded me of a time when a colleague of mine from the Obama-Biden years had brought some of his colleagues to the White House to talk with us about what it was like now. And as we were comparing the way the Biden press office functioned compared to the Obama press office, which he had been a member of, we were struck by, in some ways, the media landscape has changed a lot, but many of the practices were very similar.
sometimes you can ask about something that's very normal in a way that makes it sound unusual. You know, I could ask, we could figure out the spelling of your first name by really focusing on how many A's are in Andrew, how many N's, whether you capitalize it, whether you ever haven't capitalized it. We're really just talking about Andrew Bates. The majority has asked you about transcripts and recordings being shared by other people. Is there anything nefarious about that? Is that standard?
In my experience, it is standard for the staff of a principal to try to make a record of their exchanges with the media, and especially if they have a sense that a reporter is doing something inappropriate or they are being leading in the way they're presenting a situation, it is normal, and I would think that it's a practice that people in both parties use quite often.
No more questions. We'll go off the record.
Mr. Bates, were you involved in any meetings regarding the pardon of President Biden's son, Hunter Biden?
I was informed about that shortly before it was announced.
Prior to its being announced, did you have any discussions about whether or not Hunter Biden would be pardoned by President Biden?
I remember that I was told at some point in the months preceding this that it was possible.
Were you in favor of Hunter Biden getting a pardon?
Yes.
And why were you in favor of that?
There were several reasons. Part of it was Hunter Biden had gone through a painful period involving addiction, and a number of the events that were a focus of the investigation took place while he was in the throes of that. I also am aware, based on public commentary by legal experts, that the crimes with which he was charged are very rarely charged to anyone.
And given the rhetoric that President Biden previously said, he wasn't going to pardon his son Hunter, and then the pardon came, were you shocked by that decision at all?
I was not shocked because I'm not a parent myself, but I do think that almost any parent would identify with that.
Were you involved in any of the meetings or discussions about the broad commutations by President Biden?
Some.
And what was discussed in some of those meetings that you were part of?
The media was interested in what actions we would take in that area during the transition. And we would get asked quite a lot about when would the next tranche of clemency actions or pardons be announced. And so we would be in touch with the attorneys and the counsel's office and other staff whose work related to those to see when might there be another development, that kind of thing.
Did you have any discussions or meetings with President Biden about these commutations?
No.
Were you aware of anyone in the press office having meetings about these commutations?
I'm not aware of individuals in the press office being in them.
And then, were you part of any meetings or discussions for the last-minute pardons of Dr. Fauci? I'll stop with that one, with Dr. Fauci.
I remember that the idea of those sorts of preemptive pardons for people who had been criticized by the then incoming president. That had been covered in the news media, and the reporters were interested on if such a thing would happen. And I remember asking about it, and I remembered thinking that it made sense because of comments that the current president made during the campaign.
Who did you ask about it?
Ben LeBolt, Karine. I also would have sent our normal procedure, and this has been the case anywhere I've worked, was you send emails about inquiries you're getting so that the different people who have equities can speak with you about it. So there were other people on those chains, probably counsel's office staff, but I don't remember who in total would have been on there.
And similar question, did you meet or speak with President Biden about these last minute pardons of Dr. Fauci and the other similar ones that went with those?
No, I learned that those were happening when they were announced.
And then switching gears a little bit, in your time working in the White House, did you ever provide President Biden with note cards for public events?
No.
Did you ever provide President Biden with any note cards or scripts for television interviews?
I don't believe so. The only thing I want to make sure I'm offering here is every place that I have worked, you do a memo ahead of an interview where you include a bio of the journalist and you mention subjects that are likely to come up, some of their previous reporting. So that was something that we did, which resembled every political workplace I've been in.
But no scripts of questions and answers?
I don't remember that happening.
Did you have any role in preparing remarks that would be entered into a teleprompter?
I was not involved with teleprompters. There were some moments where I made suggestions about things that could be put in speeches, like if there had been a economic study that reflected well on one of our proposals, or if I thought there was a criticism of another proposal, I would sometimes flag that for people working on speeches.
Did you attend any cabinet meetings during your time in the White House?
No.
It's been reported that when mainstream media, like the Wall Street Journal, reported about President Biden's mental decline in public office. For example, the Wall Street Journal's June 4th, 2024 article, "Behind Closed Doors, Biden Shows Signs of Slipping." White House staff covered up the truth. It's been reported that your colleagues believed that Biden's inner circle took advantage of your loyalty and told you to deny things they knew were true. You, along with most of the press team, rarely met with the president and didn't have firsthand knowledge of the president's wherewithal. The press team relied on senior staff for answers. Do you believe that Biden's inner circle took advantage of your loyalty to the president?
No.
Were you involved in preparations for the 2024 State of the Union?
No.
Do you have any knowledge about the medical care that President Biden received in the weeks and days before the State of the Union in 2024?
No.
Do you know if in the weeks or days before the 2024 State of the Union, White House staff discussed the need to medically treat the president so that he would be able to deliver his address to the nation?
I've never heard anything of the kind.
How often did you interact with President Biden's physician, Dr. O'Connor?
It was usually when there was a press development that that would fall into his area, mostly ahead of the releases of the summaries of his physical. We would talk with him as we prepared briefing guidance because we wanted to make sure that it was accurate and we wanted his expertise. And there were other moments when the president had COVID. We were in touch so that we could update the press on how he was doing.
How often did you interact with Dr. O'Connor during your time in the White House?
I wouldn't know how to ballpark it, but it was intermittent based on if something was happening in the press that would make me feel a need to get his point of view.
Were you ever present for any medical consultations or treatments performed by Dr. O'Connor?
No.
Did you discuss President Biden's treatment or health with Dr. O'Connor, setting aside relevant information for what you're communicating to the press?
No.
Do you have any knowledge about amphetamines that President Biden was given during his term in office?
I've never heard of that happening.
Have you ever seen President Biden receive an IV infusion of anything?
No.
Do you have any knowledge of President Biden's political advisors weighing in on whether Dr. O'Connor should conduct a cognitive exam of the president?
No.
It's been reported that you stated, "We do not provide the dates on which the president is seen by the range of specialists who participate in his physical, nor their names, and that there have been no neurologist visits besides the one for his physical." Do you recall making that statement?
I don't recall the specific wording. I remember the setting.
Do you recall President Biden seeing a neurologist additional times in 2023 and 2024?
No.
It's been reported that neurologist Dr. Kevin Kennard visited the executive mansion 8 times in 8 months between 2023 and 2024. Are you aware of those visits?
I am aware of some reporting about his visits. I'm also aware that he has had a long-standing relationship with the White House medical unit spanning multiple administrations. But I am only aware of him having seen President Biden with regard to the physicals, and we disclosed every time that he had received a thorough neurological workup.
Ms. Jean-Pierre was asked about Dr. Kennard's visits, and she cited security reasons when declining to provide context about these visits. She didn't say what those security concerns were. Do you know what they were?
In any administration, there is going to be a consideration over what kind of material should be made public from a security standpoint, and which specialists are treating the president is something that foreign actors, others who should not know, would like to know.
Do you know specifically what the security reasons were behind not wanting to speak publicly about the neurologist visiting President Biden?
Really just what I mentioned.
What you mentioned applied specifically to Dr. Kennard's visits?
It applied to any specialist who had been seeing the president, was my understanding.
And where does that practice come from? Is it written down anywhere?
I don't know.
Who told you that that was the practice?
I don't remember, but I remember being told that around this time.
Thank you.
Sorry to go back, I think, to our last hour. You told us that you've previously yelled at and sworn at journalists before. Have you ever threatened a journalist or an editor physically?
Never.
Have you ever threatened a journalist or editor regarding their career prospects?
No.
Have you ever threatened journalist or editor with discipline that they would receive from their own publication?
The only thing that could occur to me is sometimes when you are having a debate with a reporter, which is a big part of every spokesperson's job, whatever the party or Hill administration, you can sometimes say, I think that something you are considering claiming is at odds with the facts. Here is why, here is public information, or you have heard from somebody who was on hand for the events under discussion, and that if you made that claim and it was demonstrably untrue, it would not look good, or it would not be appreciated. I have had things of that nature said to me by journalists, right? Like, if you say X, like, I don't think your bosses would be super happy, right? But it's not my style to threaten people like that.
Have you ever threatened a journalist or an editor with future access to admin officials?
Like the AP maybe?
I'm sorry?
Like the AP maybe? Sorry, go ahead.
Would you like an interview, counselor? We can
No,
bring you back.
you could talk to your colleagues about the AP, the press pool, but go ahead.
I do think that is a fair point when the current president is suing the Wall Street
I'm asking
Journal.
about you, sir.
No, I know. But I think that if the current president is suing the Wall Street Journal for outing elements
Once
of his
again, sir,
relationship
I would
with
ask that
Jeffrey
you just-
Epstein,
You may not like his answer, but let him finish.
I would ask that he answer my question.
Finish your answer.
the current president is suing the Wall Street Journal because they detailed that he wrote a disgusting letter to Jeffrey Epstein that said, "May every day be another beautiful secret." And I do not think that anything I have ever done in my life could come remotely close to how unethical that is.
Okay, now I would like you to answer my original question, which was, have you ever threatened a journalist or editor with future access or pulling back future access to admin officials?
The only thing that occurs to me is if someone had demonstrated a pattern of hiding relevant facts or of being over the top in their negativity to the degree that we did not trust them to be fair about their representation of people, we could then consider being less liberal in the way that we granted interviews, but that would have to be based on a very significant set of events, and I would not consider that to be a threat. I would consider that to be a reasonable caution about, hey, you left out a really important thing that our top person for whatever issue said, and that fundamentally changed the meaning. So how could we trust that if we do this kind of thing again, there won't be that kind of distortion? And I think that's fair.
Did you ever take that action toward anyone at the New York Times?
We had no shortage of disagreements with the New York Times. I am not remembering a specific moment with someone there.
Did you ever take that action with anybody at the Wall Street Journal?
We disagreed strongly, as I noted, with the way the story, and I believe May of last year was done, or June of last year was done. However, in dealing with those same reporters, we connected them with senior administration officials, even though we had a strong feelings.
Did you ever advise anybody in the administration not to speak with those reporters?
I remember encouraging colleagues in the administration to speak with them.
Did you ever tell anybody in the administration not to speak with them?
Not that I remember.
Did you ever, I won't use threaten, did you ever take action to limit a journalist's ability to access administration officials, and that journalist was from the Washington Post?
There were plenty of moments where we disagreed with Washington Post, and I think that could be said of any modern administration, but I don't remember doing anything of that kind.
How about Politico?
Same answer.
AP?
Same answer.
Reuters?
The same.
Do you remember any specific instance where you communicated to anybody in the administration not to speak with a reporter?
There were definitely some times where I did that, and that has happened in every modern administration.
Did you ever direct or advise anybody in the administration not to speak to a reporter about President Biden's health, age, or ability to do the job?
I was, I think, quite an evangelist for the individuals who worked with him most closely, sharing their perspectives on him. As we've been talking about, we would work to provide people who could speak very credibly about what it's like to work with him most closely. So I want that to be clear, that I was working to ensure more interviews like that happened. The only situation that I can see where I would do that was if we thought someone had demonstrated such bad faith that they could not be trusted to accurately report on the thrust of what was told.
Did that ever happen?
I don't remember a particular instance, but on almost any major issue, there are going to be times where a reporter who has shown themselves to be less than fair reaches out to one of our colleagues, and they will often tell the press office. Some of them won't, but that would happen on a variety of issues. I want to be clear about that, but I am not remembering a specific moment.
Okay, and just to return, I think 2 questions ago, did you ever advise anyone in the administration, the White House or the administration at large, to not speak to the press about President Biden's age, health, or mental ability or ability to do the job?
I'm not remembering a specific moment where that happened. On the whole, I was pushing for more interviews with the press about what it was like to really deal with him.
Brought up Jeffrey Epstein, of all things. I'm wondering, did you ever have any discussions with President Biden about releasing Jeffrey Epstein documents?
No, because he did not have a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein in the way the current president did.
But President Biden could have released just to be clear, the Jeffrey Epstein story has been alive for, decades. Was there ever a conversation in the White House to release documents regarding Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell?
I don't know, but he did not.
That's the answer. You don't.
I don't know.
Just to return to something we touched back a while ago, you worked on the confirmation of Justice Brown Jackson, is that correct?
Yes.
What was your role in her confirmation process?
I was the press office staffer who took point on judicial confirmations. And so when the vacancy came into existence, the White House built a confirmations team, and I was the main press office person who was assigned to it under Ben LeBolt, who would later be the communications director.
And outside of Mr. LeBolt, was there a particular senior advisor that was in charge of this confirmation in particular?
Senator Doug Jones was brought in to be a senior advisor for it, and we worked closely with the White House counsel's office and the Office of Congressional Affairs. And Mignon Moore was also brought in as an advisor.
Was Bruce Reed a part of this confirmation process?
I don't remember dealing with him personally, but I don't know.
Mike Donnellan?
Same answer as Bruce. I don't remember dealing with him personally, but I don't know.
Steve Ricchetti?
I feel like Steve was involved because so much of Steve's work had to do with the Senate.
Annie Tomasini?
I don't remember her being involved directly.
Outside of the, you mentioned the meeting with President Biden going over a speech you wrote about Justice Jackson. Outside of that, how often did you meet with President Biden about her confirmation and the confirmation process?
That was the only time that I was in a formal meeting with him about it, because that was the announcement. It was a unique day. And then the remainder of the work was of a different character, where I was often on the Hill, moving from office to office with Judge Jackson, Senator Jones, and some of my colleagues from the counsel's office and Office of Legislative Affairs.
There was a press conference, I believe this was in July, pre-President Biden dropping out of the race, to which you posted on X, to answer the question on everyone's minds, no, Joe Biden does not have a doctorate in foreign affairs, he's just that fucking good. This happened approximately 10 or 15 minutes before the end of the press conference. And right after the press conference ended, Congressman Himes posted that he would hope President Biden would step down, and people have since called your post tone deaf. Do you recall making this post on X?
I do.
And why did you make this post?
Because during that press conference, which I believe was just short of an hour, the president continually demonstrated a very sophisticated understanding of geopolitics, including in an extended back and forth with David Sanger. And my point was that you cannot do that unless you have a lot happening upstairs.
Did anyone direct you to make that post?
No.
Did anyone review that post?
No.
Did anyone have to approve or review your posts?
No.
We're good, we'll go off the record.
To begin, I just like to make sure you have in front of you, which will give you a copy of Chairman Comer's letter to you, inviting you to come and talk to the committee, and also Article 2 of the Constitution, which you needn't review, but you may want to have it handy. In Chairman Comer's letter to you, the letter makes some innuendo about maybe you or other senior aides at the White House exercising the powers of the executive branch without President Biden's knowledge or consent, performing the chief executive's duties. These are not defined anywhere in your letter or maybe anywhere else. And so it may be useful for us to try to get to ground on what that could possibly mean. And so I'm going to ask you a few questions that are in many ways just paraphrasing sections of Article 2. Your counsel can always interject if they think I'm misrepresenting what the Constitution says. In your view, did President Biden faithfully execute the office of President of the United States?
Yes.
And in your view, did he, to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States?
Yes.
Did you ever personally act as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces?
No.
Did you ever personally grant reprieves and pardons?
No.
Did you personally make any international treaties?
No.
Did you personally nominate and appoint any ambassadors, cabinet secretaries, judges, or other Senate-confirmed officials?
No.
You didn't disguise yourself as President Biden and deliver 3 State of the Union addresses, did you?
No.
Did you ever receive any foreign ambassadors or recognize any foreign countries?
No.
Did you ever adjourn any House of Congress?
No.
So did you ever perform any duties exclusively reserved for the President of the United States?
Absolutely not.
We'll go off the record.